What is up, everybody? John TheMorgile here for a live hangout, live flat Earth hangout. Wow, a little bit of feedback there. Where is that coming from? Oh, God. Ah, mute the ad. I love the fact that you can mute and skip the ads on YouTube. It's one of the best things I've always loved about YouTube whenever they had ads is, at least most of the time you can skip them. One of the biggest reasons I originally got away from regular TV was like, I honestly just got so tired of the advertisements. Like, you watch an hour-long show on television, and you get about 38 minutes of content and about, I don't know, anywhere maybe 15, 22 minutes of advertisements, and it's just unbearable, right? And so that's one good thing. Hopefully, knock on wood, I've only got glass, but knock on something hard, knock on wood, that YouTube will sort of keep it that way to where, yes, we can skip the ads, and we don't get loaded with 15 ads in a row every 15 minutes of content. When YouTube gets that way, then hopefully by then there will be some other platform that will actually respect First Amendment rights and fair use laws by default, as opposed to sort of going after content creators as criminals before even hearing, their side of the story in terms of content ID or copyright strike appeals. So looks like, did somebody join us while I was blabbing my mouth? Or am I tripping? Let me check. Looks like we got Candy. What's up, Candy?
I was muted and I was trying to get back. I just sent you a message on Facebook, though. I didn't want to say it out loud. I didn't want to interrupt you either. And take that to the bank, because I don't ever do that to nobody. I always end up interrupting everybody.
No, I'm terrible. I am terrible with it, and I am working on it. Like, I'm literally trying to work on not interrupting people. But for so long in our lives, right, we just have such non-interesting conversations, it seems. And then when you finally get into these interesting conversations, especially things like flat Earth, there's an excitement abound, and it's almost like, I don't know, we sort of forget our manners and indeed interrupt one another. But that's some of the best conversations come. And I'm the type of person to where, like, if you talk for 5 minutes about flat Earth, I'll have 50 different ideas like about what to say, and if I don't write them down, then I'll forget 48 of them. And so either I'm forced to interrupt people or literally take notes about what people are saying, and either way is sort of silly. But I think taking notes and then going back is probably going to be best for me, because anybody that's familiar with my videos knows that I'm pretty verbose, and people have often accused me of making 3-hour videos that could have been achieved in 1 hour, and I would invite them to go ahead and just do the 1 hour video on your own, because some things are sort of complicated, and we have to explain all sorts of theory, and we have to explain all sorts of backstory just to get to a certain point to where we can start making the crux of the argument, right? So anyway, yeah,
Those people that say that, if you had left all the technicalities out, would have said, well, you should have mentioned this, and you didn't even talk about this. Well, did you know that?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I learned that early on coming out with flat Earth videos, that if you don't include every single caveat and and you'll never get them all, but if you try to get all the caveats in, and if you try to get all of the I don't know, the science behind the globe theory in, and then how that's explained in the flat Earth reality, yeah, if you're not very thorough, then you get attacked for being vague, and you have to answer a million questions about every little aspect of things. And so over the years, it seems like, at least me personally, my videos, it's allowed my videos to evolve, because I try to answer all of those questions in the video itself, so it's self-referencing. You don't have to, or at least I don't have to go through millions of comments that are the same thing, like, well, what about the Coriolis effect, and what about Christopher Columbus? So if I could get all those little things in there ahead of time, like you said, to avoid those sort of arguments that I missed this, or I didn't talk about that. But yeah, it's a double-edged sword, and you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right?
Yep. Is my sound okay? Like, am I choppy?
No, you sound good, and I was just on mute. I was just saying hello to Karen B in the chat and hello to YouTube. And no, you sound fine. Who else did we gain? Oh no, I thought we gained somebody. Okay, so there should be some more people coming on. I'm just doing another hello Flatastic, hello Fepe. Can't wait for the eclipse. Yeah, the eclipse coming in August. Anyone else experiencing video lag? Yeah, I'm watching this on my side, and I am getting sort of a buffering, so I'm not sure what that's all about. Maybe what I'll do, let me go ahead and shut down Skype. I do have broadband hooked up to Ethernet, but let me quit out of Skype. And of course, I'm using Google Chrome and Firefox, so let me get out of Firefox. But of course, I've got a pretty low upload speed. I think it's like 2 megabytes a second, but I still think that should be fine for this.
Who do y'all have Charter over there?
Yeah, we got Charter. Is anyone getting audio lag? Because I don't. We may be doing some screen shares and stuff, but as long as the audio is coming through clear, then that's great. But what tends to happen is sometimes is when you start seeing the audio bog down right in the beginning like this, we may expect to see some video problems later, but we shall see. And by the way, Karen B, if you want to join the Hangout, I see Bob's there. Bob, if you want to join the Hangout, just let me know and I'll send you guys a link. This is just sort of a impromptu thing I'm doing Friday at 8. I've been planning it since yesterday. Just wanted to talk a few flat Earth things. One of the biggest things that I want to talk about, and I have mentioned it a few places, but I've been speaking with a guy. Man, and my computer restarted itself this morning. It did an update, and so of course it restarted itself, and I've lost all of my all the files that I had open, and everything's closed itself. But there's a guy who lives in a place called. Let me find the note. Candy, say something while I'm stalling. Okay, I got to find this notepad file that got closed.
Okay, right now I'm trying to add Karen to the call and. Kyle just messaged me a second ago. I kind of forgot to send him the link, but I'm trying to add him now. I don't know why. I'm trying to do it on my phone because I came on my computer and I tried to find the Hangout on my list of Hangouts and it's not there. It says I'm in an empty Hangout.
What you should, all you have to do is that link that I sent you. Because I don't do it through you guys do Hangouts a different way that I do. I just I start the Hangout through YouTube. And when I do that, it generates a link. And that link that I sent you, all they have to do is copy that link and paste it into a Chrome browser. And it'll bring them right in.
You can just click on it. You don't even have to copy it. But I was trying to do it with, you can just hit, I thought once you, like if, I don't know. Usually I can go back to the list of Hangouts and just go to add people. But that's why I said, to do what I said to do, but I can't, it's not working for some reason. I don't know, maybe it's because you did it different. Doesn't matter. I'm about to send the link right now.
Okay, yeah, hang on guys. We're getting through some technical issues.
I got this. I'm sending you the link, Karen, if you can hear me. Just 30 seconds. My computer is very slow, especially if I have Skype open.
Yeah, no worries. And I found the okay, so the place where this guy lives is called Bergen. Okay, it's B, that's B as in Bravo, E as in Echo, RGEN. It's about 60 degrees north latitude. Okay, so I'm just going to do sort of a quick poll to the people in the chat because, and I'll tell you why. This isn't a trick question, but this is something that I find very interesting. I was always told, I always remembered that the midnight sun phenomenon occurs like, let's say it's the North Arctic for sure, that it occurs for about a month surrounding the summer solstice in the north. And that's what I remember sort of being taught, you know, and although maybe I've got a bad memory when it comes to that sort of thing, but I've asked lots of other people and they've said the same thing. I even remember people saying that it usually lasts less than a month within the Arctic Circle. And so this guy that I'm talking to through Skype, He lives in Bergen, and it's 60 degrees north, so it's actually over 6 degrees south of the Arctic Circle. And they get the 24-hour sun phenomenon, or no sunset, so they don't have nighttime at all, from the beginning of June all the way to the end of August. So without having to do too much calculations, it's almost 90 days. And he said that he's lived there his whole life. Everybody there knows that. It's commonly well known. And what I find really interesting is, unless I'm just really not remembering my science class or whatever, that this doesn't okay, so say it's plausible on a sphere, whatever. Even if it's plausible on a sphere, then if we go to 60 degrees south, or even say 61 degrees south to account for the elevation of Bergen, and then some erring on the side of the caution for the globe. If you go to 61 degrees south, then they should see almost 90 days of sun for the southern summer solstice. And, you know, it really makes sense then that the Antarctic Treaty begins at the 60 degrees south. You know, you can't go bring or store fuel south of 60 degrees. If you go down there, you'll be turned away. There's a character, possibly a real legitimate person, who goes by the name of John Brahma, who claims that he works with the world governmental agencies who are responsible for essentially logistically upholding the Antarctic Treaty. He claims that it is mostly automated, and that there are 400 people in this group, and they all know the Earth's flat, and that the Antarctic Treaty is to keep people away from being able to make far south observations, which will clearly give away the flat Earth. Now, of course, you have bases in Antarctica where people can travel to, so it's not like we're saying you can't go to Antarctica. But if you do go on to Antarctica, it's going to be on a guided tour. You're not going to go there on your own volition in your own vessel. You necessarily have to have all sorts of government permission of the Antarctic Treaty Board. And so you're going to go to a little base camp where there is no free roaming. You're not allowed to travel from base camp to base camp. So it's a controlled thing. If you're going to go to Antarctica, it's a controlled thing. Now, if you were to, say, take your yacht, let's say you're a millionaire and you have a nice yacht, if you were to take that to 60 degrees south, you're going to be intercepted by automation that will trigger a call to the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard will turn you away. Now, if I've got this right, and I still need to talk to John Brahma a little bit more. I've only Skyped with him on chat, like chat-wise, a very little bit. But according to what I gather, they won't use lethal force if you refuse to turn around. However, who's to say what's going to happen once the Coast Guard calls it into their superiors? I mean, I would expect to see black helicopters force them to turn around. And so you can call this paranoia, but the Antarctic Treaty exists. And the overarching point that I want to make here is that if we could simply go to 60 or 61 degrees south during this the southern summer solstice, then we should see nearly 90 days of continual sunlight. And if you don't see that from 60 degrees north, then the globe is dead some more. The globe's even deader, because if you get nearly 90 days of sunlight from 60 degrees north, and the elevation of Bergen is up there a little bit, and so you can account for that on the south. But this is really, that sort of blew me away, because I don't know, maybe I was taught wrong, or maybe I remember wrong, but I just remember being taught that the midnight sun in the north was a phenomenon that lasted exclusive to the Arctic Circle, and lasted about a month. And to find that everybody knows, at least in that area where they live so far north, because 60 degrees north is pretty far north, but everybody knows that they get 90 days of sun every year. And it, to me, that was sort of shocking. And a lot of people that I brought this to, it was also shocking. And this right here is a very excellent way to yet again disprove the globe. The problem is we can't go do scientific studies at 61 degrees south without permission. And so maybe some of the actual scientists with real funding out there and people that have things like yachts. I don't have real funding. I don't have yachts. If I did, I'd go do it. Get the permission necessary and go make observations and see if you get 24 hours of sun from the beginning of June to the end of August. So what do you guys? I don't know if we've gained some more people, but what do y'all in the chat think about that? And what do you guys think about it here on the panel? Looks like we gained. Y'all are both muted. We gained a tank, and we still got Candy. Looks like you're muted. There you go.
Yeah, that's Brian.
Gaining tanks are always good. How's it going?
Hey, Brian.
Did y'all meet before?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought that you were on my hangout together, but I wasn't sure.
He probably doesn't recognize me here. How's this?
No, I recognize you. Yeah, I recognize your voice. I remember a voice, and I match voices with faces very well. But I will always forget a name. You know what I mean? Like I'm much better with faces and voices than I am names. But anyway, no, I don't always forget names. I will definitely learn all names. But you know, the online community is weird because you know, if you hang out with somebody every day or work with somebody every day for just a few days, you're not going to forget their name. But, you know, when you're dealing with dozens of people that you've never actually physically hung out with, you know, it's hard to put a name to a sort of a hypocretical entity. You know what I mean? Not saying you're hypothetical, but we've never actually met, I guess is what I'm saying.
I'm hypothetical.
So do you remember?
Ace McLeod and Candor, Kyle, they just texted me at the exact same time. My phone only dinged one time because they both texted me at the same time. It was weird. But Ace said what time. I've already emailed him the link and everything, but Kyle said he's driving at the moment, so he'll be here in a little bit. I just wanted to get that out. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So what do you guys remember being taught about the midnight sun phenomenon in science class?
Oh yeah.
And like am I totally like retarded? Am I totally retarded that I thought that it was strictly in the Arctic Circle and only for about a month?
Well, I couldn't remember what it was, but I know when Sergei, he's in Russia. He's in the Arctic Circle. So he has that. And we talked about it recently, and he said that it's 3 months sunlight and 3 months of darkness in the winter. And I was like, what?
Right.
I could have sworn it was like a month, and that's all. Like, I don't remember. I said, well,
yeah.
I feel dumb.
Exactly. That's the same thing. But furthermore, what's even crazier is this guy's at 60 degrees south. The Arctic Circle doesn't even start in, I think it's like 66 or something, right? Or 65, whatever. But I mean, 5 or 6 degrees of longitude, that's a long ass distance. So he's not, I mean, yeah, he's near to the Arctic Circle, but he's damn far from it. And so like my biggest point is it really makes a lot of sense why the Antarctic Treaty would begin at the 60 degrees south, because frankly, the Arctic Circle starts at 66. But this whole globe model would be 100% falsified if we could just do a 3-month study of the southern solstice in the south. We don't even have to go all the way to the Antarctic Circle to do it. And if we don't see the exact equal and opposite of what we see in the north during the summer, then, like I said, the globe is even deader.
Yeah, but we can't do that.
Well, I think that we're going to be able to, though, and that's why I think like we need to really approach flat Earth from a common sense standpoint and appeal to people's common sense. Like, let me give you an example. It is common sense that we probably shouldn't be strip mining our mountains, right? Have you guys seen what strip mining of mountains is? Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm out here in Colorado. I see it.
Okay, it's awful. It's terrible. Mountains are basically, they've dug out all the coal and diamonds and whatever they're going to dig out of the mountains. And so to get just to squeeze every last bit of value they can out of these mountain ranges, they essentially destroy entire mountain ranges with dynamite to get goods out of them. And you know, I've grown up in the East Coast my whole life, and some of the most beautiful country you'll see is the mountain ranges that are, you know, up the East Coast of the United States going up into Virginia. I mean, it really is just mystical, like very, very beautiful country. And, you know, these mountain ranges are literally being just decimated, destroyed by corporations, turning like beautiful mountainous landscapes into something like a Mars, you know, and I hate to use that, but just basically dead lands, bad lands, you know, dead country where, and it, you know, it has other ecological factors, you know, like flash flooding, because mountains and all the trees that were there and stuff would prevent natural, you know, it would absorb natural water and prevent things like flash flooding. So it doesn't make sense to destroy our mountains. It doesn't make sense to drill for fossil fuels off the Gulf of Mexico and literally destroy the entire fishing economy of the Gulf Coast and literally destroy entire ecosystems of fish that we rely on, not to mention all the other pollution. That doesn't make sense. So, and then you could go on an example like the Exxon Valdez disaster. I mean, you could go on, let's say also cutting down all the trees of the rainforest, right? You could go on and on and on and on and on of the ways that we are basically just destroying the Earth. And there's a case to be made, whether the Earth is a sphere or whether it's flat, that the Antarctic is slam packed full of resources according to all accounts. And so the fact that it is off limits to corporations, and I'm not any big huge advocate for corporations, believe you me, but the fact that we are allowing these corporations to destroy our world, to destroy our country, and it's what they're doing in America is nothing compared to what they're doing in other countries, like the countries in the Middle East, and it makes absolutely no sense. First of all, petroleum makes absolutely no sense. We don't need it. We can run engines on stuff other than petroleum. But okay, so just even hand them petroleum because it just makes them too much money, and the US dollar is tied inherently to the petroleum. And so Antarctica is a huge opportunity for these greedy corporations to get the hell out of our backyards, stop fracking, stop blowing up our mountains, stop destroying ecosystems, and do this in Antarctica. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense, especially with today's technology. Even if it might cost a little bit more to ship it, which is ridiculous. I mean, I remember I bought a webcam for $1 and I had to spend $25 to get it shipped from China. So, to preserve our ecosystem, to preserve the health of our world and our immediate surroundings, it just makes a lot of sense to at least prospect the idea of using Antarctica as a potential source of fuel for all of history, or for the rest of history, human history going forward, until we can find things to replace petroleum, which we already have anyway. But that makes sense. And if we present it in that sort of a way to the public, then, it's not necessarily about flat Earth, it's about common sense. But I think if we can do away with the Antarctic Treaty, which I actually set up a petition to do that about 1.5 years ago, and I got less than 400 signatures out of 100,000, so didn't go very well, but hey, at least I tried. And we can try to do it again, because the Antarctic Treaty has been around for long before most of us in this movement were born. And certainly every single one of the people who signed the Antarctic Treaty originally is dead. Unless I'm sadly mistaken, there may be 100-and-something-year-old guy that originally signed it, but I would imagine that all of the original signers of that are dead. And so I think that it's just absolutely foolish to dictate the the trajectory of our the profiteering, the places where these corporations dig up and profiteer from, because of this antiquated treaty that makes absolutely no sense. So I think that we should get rid of the Antarctic Treaty for common sense purposes that anyone can appeal to, and not just flat earthers. Now, in the meantime, what this will achieve is we've got lots of great technology. We could set up permanent camps in Antarctica, and we could set up transportation systems from camp to camp, whether that's underground. And, you know, I've got a hunch that the government and corporations are already doing this out there, but how the hell would we know, because we can't go there and check on them? But I've spoken with several people who come from the UK, Royal Navy, as well as American people with the Navy who have been to Antarctica, which is a direct violation of the Antarctic Treaty, by the way. And so, you know, I would not be surprised to find that there are already big corporations in the Antarctic setting up all sorts of infrastructures and also doing research that may not technically be legal in any of the countries. So it is a very convenient place, Antarctica is, for the elites, whether the Earth is flat or whether it's a ball. And so that's one of the things that I think is, you know, one of the ways that I think that we should get flat Earth into the public eye is not necessarily with ridiculous memes and violence and graffiti and malfeasance and deception, but instead, let's come up with some common sense reasons why regular old people would want to revisit taking another look at the Antarctic, even if it's just for greedy corporation sense. And I can't leave out the Arctic as well, because for all we know, the ancient stories of the Arctic being, you know, essentially 4 land masses with Mount Meru in the center, for all we know, that's 100% true. But the Arctic Treaty also applies. And so at this day and age, with the current illegitimate governments running the world, it's very difficult for us to get a clear picture of the edges. And if anybody's ever done a puzzle, this is a perfect analogy. When you do a puzzle, you always start with the edges. You start with the corners and the edges so you can get a frame of what you're working with. And I'm not necessarily saying that the Earth ends at some point like a puzzle, or that it's a disk in space. I'm not saying that, but it would be very helpful to understand what's going on the entire length around the Antarctic, and whether that's 50,000 miles or 60,000 miles, or whether that's 14,000 miles like it is in the north. That will be very interesting to see and measure, because up until now, as far as I understand it, all of the different degrees of longitude at different latitudes have been computed and measured in the northern hemisphere, and have just been assumed or rubber stamped or clone stamped from the north to the south in terms of the southern hemisphere. So essentially what they did is they measured, let's just say, a degree of longitude from 45 north. Okay, and they do that all over the place at 45 north, and they measure a degree of longitude from 35 north and 36 north, and they calculate this all up, and they have a very good understanding of the apparent radius of the Earth, flat or sphere, right up to the equator. But what it appears that they've done is, and this is relatively recent history, like within the last 500 years, they simply clone stamped the northern values to the south, because if you assume that the Earth is a sphere, that's a huge shortcut. You don't have to go and measure all this stuff. Well, they just assume it's a sphere, and so they just save themselves a whole maybe 100 years of measuring longitudes and latitudes in the south. But see, that's the whole thing with the Antarctic Treaty. We really can't get, and yes, there are people who live in Australia and New Zealand, but I don't think New Zealand gets as far south as 60 degrees south. Do they? Like, I can obviously check real quick, but what is the average south latitude, or what is the south latitude of New Zealand? It's 41 south. Yeah, so 41 south, I mean, yeah, that's pretty far south, but it isn't that far south, right? And so and Australia is a relatively small landmass compared to all of the other land masses, and we just don't have enough data real data, real measurements of southern longitudes from different, southern latitudes to actually measure exactly what's going on, it appears they've just used the assumption that the Earth is a sphere, rubber stamped the northern values to the south, and it is that fallacious construct, that fallacious matrix, by trying to take a shortcut, assuming the Earth is a sphere, and it is that very fallacious matrix that we have not only in the globe map, but also the Mercator projection, as well as the AE projection. So inherently, all of those maps and even the globe are flawed. And you could go on and on with this, but am I making sense to you guys? And have we gained anyone in the panel here? I know we're expecting a few people. Oh, there they are. Hey, all.
Hello.
Hey.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. How you doing?
Doing very well, man. Doing very well. Thanks for coming. So I guess before you got on, we were talking about Bergen. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. Bergen. It's 60 degrees north, and they get, the 24-hour sun. They get that for 90 days every year, almost 90 days every year, and they're not even in the Arctic Circle. He's at 60 north.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And there's another little fact is on the same degree, Georgia, the state, is on the same degree of latitude as Egypt, Cairo, Egypt. And in Georgia, you can see Polaris, no problem. Of course, you can't see Sigma Octantis, right? But
Okay.
in Egypt, you can see both. And they're supposed to be on the same degree of latitude.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Weird. Yeah, very interesting little tidbits with what you can see in different locations that you would think. Man, I don't know. Maybe the Earth's not shaped like a circle. You know what I mean? Maybe it kind of bows out. Wouldn't that be weird, just to trip you out?
Yeah, we really don't know. We really don't know what the overall shape is, and I think that like what people assume a circle because it makes sense. That was what was presented in the AE projection, and it does make a lot of sense. But one of the things, and then no, the map is flawed, and I've already explained why the map's flawed. It's flawed for a number of reasons. I mean, it's an azimuthal equidistant projection, so it inherently has flaws in it. It's only good for measuring distances from the North Pole and going south. Anything else other than that, all the distances are skewed, so it's not a model. But one of the points that I thought was even more interesting about this 90 days of sun in Bergen from the beginning of June to the end of August is you have a lot of flat earthers out there who are saying that the northern summer sun, the northern 24-hour sun during the northern solstice doesn't exist. They say that's a hoax. And the reason that they're saying this is to promote the idea or to cast doubt on this sort of circular layout, right? And so honestly, like even whether the sun is going in a square pattern or whether it's going in a diamond pattern or whether it's somehow going in a perfectly straight line and then Pac-Manning itself to the other side instantly, we really don't know. But what we do know is that there's definitely a 24-hour sun phenomenon in the far north, even as far south as 60 degree north, for up to like 90 days. And so to anybody out there who's saying that the 24-hour sun in the north doesn't exist to try and make their linear flat earth model work in theory, to me is just, I don't know if they're purposefully deceiving people or if they're just lots of people, man. Lots of people.
They say
Yes.
no 24-hour sun in either or?
Right. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard it maybe a half a dozen
right.
times. I won't attach any names to it, but I'm telling you the truth. Are you familiar with the linear sort of flat Earth Pac-Man model?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay, so you're familiar
I've
with
even thought of something like that way like 2 years ago. It was like, just thinking about how in the Bible it says you can't measure the earth and, the portals and whatnot. And I was like, wouldn't that be a trip if it's an actual just the Mercator projection, the flat map? and the sun just kept going sideways. But I quickly said no. You know what I mean?
Hey,
Right.
quick question. What is the name of the place you're talking about that's 60 degrees?
Bergen. It's Bergen, unless I totally botched it up in my. He speaks good English, but there's a bit of a language barrier. It may be Bergen, Beregen.
Is there a video on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna do
Oh,
a whole video.
nice.
He sent me. It was 3 o'clock in the morning where he was at the first time I spoke with him, which was last week, and I'm planning on speaking with him again tomorrow. And I'm gonna capture video again from well after midnight, and I want to do this all the way through to the end of August. And the ultimate video is going to be showing 90 days of no sunset at 60 degrees north.
So what about this? What if the magnetic lines of declination are, I don't know, off-centered from like the actual North Pole that the Polaris and the Sun rotate around? You know what I mean?
The magnetic is way off.
Right. So let's say you're in Bergen and it says 60 degrees off of the North Pole. I mean, that's ridiculous. But what if it's really a lot closer to the North Pole and it's just freaking compasses are not to be trusted? You know what I mean?
No, we're talking about 60 degrees north latitude. So like the equator's 0, and then you're getting up to the Arctic Circle.
The Arctic Circle, right?
Yeah, the Arctic Circle's like 66 degrees, I think. I can pull it up, but even five degrees of longitude is a very long distance.
But see, even in even in the north of Alaska, where I know people that have been there, they only get a few days of 24-hour sun. They don't get no months. You know what I mean? I think that's only supposed to be the North Pole.
Right. Yeah. See, that's exactly what it is. See, we're told that, like, look at Alaska, and I don't know how far north is Alaska, but I don't think it's quite 60 degrees. But yeah, we're told that Alaska gets a few days of sunlight and the North Pole gets like a month. That's what I remember being taught. But when you realize that these people that have lived at 60 degrees north their whole life, in terms of longitude, 60 degrees north latitude, I mean, the thing is, this is the whole point, is if we could just simply go to 60 degrees south during the southern summer solstice and just simply observe, and even we'll go ahead and give it an extra degree because of the elevation of Bergen. So say 61 south, and just sit there for 90 days during it would be not June to August, but obviously the southern summer solstice. And if we don't see 90 days of sunlight continuously without sunset, then the globe is even deader.
Well, just for the record, Alaska goes from 60 degrees to 70. Top of Alaska is at 70.
Okay, and so where was that person at? So that's interesting, because you'd think if it was a globe, right? If it was a globe, then if somebody at 60 degrees north in Alaska should get the exact same thing as somebody 60 degrees north in Bergen.
They should.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah.
So any other thoughts on that? Because this blew me away. And now the guy who I'm talking to on this is very, very smart guy. He speaks English as a second language, so there is a little bit of a language barrier, but obviously his English is way better than my Norwegian, because I don't speak a lick of it. But he works for a company. His specialty is he works on a device that uses what's called eccentricity-based mathematics. Anybody familiar with that term at all? I had never heard of it before. Eccentricity-based mathematics.
No, and I took a lot of math in school.
Okay.
Never heard of it.
So here's what he's saying. And he says that he applies this mathematics to real life all the time. And he knows that, we're talking in terms of the curvature calculation, we always use 8 inches per mile squared. And that is good to describe a tangent line from the curve. What is that vertical descent going to be? right? And so it's, 8 inches per mile squared is a pretty standard one that we all use that's accepted by globies and flat earthers. Now, what he's saying, however, is forget the tangent line and forget the squared. What he's saying is the actual shape of a perfect sphere, and this is in terms of eccentricity. A sphere has 0 eccentricity. So it is a perfect sphere is exactly 1-to-1 ratio in terms of eccentricity. So here's the thing. Here's what he's saying. So forgetting about tangent lines for a minute, but just the actual shape of the curve, he's saying that it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every unit, you don't have to worry about miles, kilometers, meters, inches. For every unit that you move forward, then you move that unit down. And so I tried to draw this out and map this out, and so I'm still having a hard time understanding it because it's a sort of a 3-dimensional mathematics, and it is complex, but it makes a lot of sense that, we could say that the curvature ratio is actually 1-to-1 on any perfect sphere. Because if you think about it this way, like you've got a what is it, a protractor, compass, whatever you use to draw perfect circles, protractor, whatever. You stick the needle goes in the center, and then you can adjust the radius of the thing. The pencil's on the other end, compass, whatever. You draw a circle with it. And so if you think about it in this regard, for every unit that you move forward, you get that much curvature. And one thing that we talked about a lot on the Globe Busters, and Jaron has been trying to get this point across to me, and I didn't get it, was that the curvature doesn't add up. And so with what this guy's saying, it blew me away because it totally made what Jaron was saying click with me. And so if the Earth's circumference, if it's a sphere, is 25,000 miles, we'll just give it a round number. It's 24,897, whatever, but it's 25,000 miles, right? So for every mile you travel forward, you go over a mile of curvature. And so it actually adds up nicely, because if you were to go 25,000 miles in a perfectly straight direction around that curve, you'd wind up right back where you started. And so based on this eccentricity-based mathematics expert, professional, he's telling me that he knows for sure that the curvature of any sphere is a 1-to-1 ratio, and it's hard to explain. But, and again, it is something different than a tangent from the curve. But
I guess you could say you took like 25,000 steps around the globe. You know what I mean? Kind of like pixelation in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
1-to-1 would be infinite analog.
That's just a 1-to-1 ratio. Yeah. So for every inch, like if you've got that compass again, protractor, whatever, once you've gone a quarter of the way, then you've gone around a quarter of a full circle. Once you've gone halfway, and you can use whatever increments of measurement you want, it doesn't matter. And once you say it's 25,000 miles, well, once you've traveled 25,000 miles, then you would have come back where you started. And so this 1-to-1 ratio makes a lot of sense. But in order to demonstrate it or prove it, I'll have to get much more in depth in eccentricity-based mathematics, or I think the easier way will be to collaborate with my friend. His name is Ger. I'll say it wrong every time. Ger. He's he is 2 meters tall. I was like, what are they feeding you guys up there? 2 meters tall.
That's like 6'6" or 6'8".
Yes,
I don't know.
6'6". Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So.
Hold on, wait. I just walked back in here. Where are they this big at?
I think Norway, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, that's the guy that's in Bergen, whatever. He's Norwegian. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see there's somebody in the chat that lives a couple miles from there?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not looking at the chat, but yeah, and it's funny because he's open about it. Like he's sort of a big boss man at his company. I don't know if I necessarily want to say the company, but it's a big company, and he has authority. and he's not a mean person at all. He's very he seems like very kind and gentle and warm-hearted and everything. Very nice guy. Yeah, gentle giant. And so, but what he does is he'll tell his coworkers that that the Earth is flat. And when they start arguing with him, you know, he's just like, yeah, oh, you're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, or whatever. I guess it would be less up there. Do you feel like you're spinning? Have you ever seen the Earth, you know, move? Like, or you know, he just jokes with him about it, and he's open about it. I guess there's a few hundred people that work there, and yeah, he just pushes flat Earth openly to everybody that he works with, and to me, that I was like, wow, that's really impressive because you know. You're lucky that you're in a position where you won't get fired, because I know if you did that in any sort of technical position in America, your ass would have been fired a long time ago.
Yeah. It's oh man, just even I was just when you were talking about that, I was thinking about living on a ball and how absolutely impossible it is, and we don't. It's not even
got
a
me
debate.
confused on
My
that
goodness.
1-to-1 ratio, though. I gotta admit, I'm totally confused on that, because that means in 2 miles there would be a 2-mile drop.
Right, if you're talking about compared to a tangent line from the curve, and so
Yeah.
it's a little bit different because you're constantly moving the z or the z axis, and that's the exact same thing I did. Like I can show you, I probably won't do it, but I started trying to draw out and diagram this, and it doesn't. I couldn't get it to work. So, but the way that it's explained to me, though, and I don't understand the mathematics, but it does make a lot of sense, is that the z-axis or the center of the circle is constantly changing. But I get what you're saying. Like I totally thought when he told me this, I couldn't make any sense of it. I started making diagrams of it, and it still didn't make sense. But what does make sense is the shape of it. So if it's a perfect circle, its eccentricity would be 0, and that makes sense, as opposed to like an oblong circle or whatever, then it would have a certain eccentricity ratio. And the way that he explains it is we're dealing with the actual shape of the thing. So let's just say that that it's a circle that is 100 inches in circumference. Well, in order to walk all the way around that circle, you're going to have to walk 100 inches. And each one of those inches represents 1 inch of curvature. And again, it's still a little bit confusing for me, and I want to talk to him some more about it. I want to learn it a little better, maybe even have him on a show sometime so he can explain it. But it was very difficult to explain. But the reason I like it is because it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
It does, but you got to remember, when we're talking about the drop on the curve, that 8 inches per mile squared, we're talking about a linear straight drop. When you're walking it, of course, you're going to walk that mileage on a curve, but we're talking about the straight drop.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So that's the difference. Yeah, of course you're going to walk, you know, if it's a 100-mile circumference, 25 miles, you're going to be a quarter way. But you walk that far, but we're measuring a straight drop, which is a different distance.
That's why I had such a hard time understanding him at first, because see, I'm thinking in terms of a tangent line from the curve, and that's not, you know, that's a single frame of reference point. That's a single starting point. And what he's saying is that you're constantly changing your frame of reference, and so it's a 1-to-1 ratio, perfect on a perfect sphere, because you know, like you said, for every inch you go, if it's a 100-inch circumference circle, for every inch you go, then you've gone 1% of that circle, and you've gone around 1 inch of curvature. So it's kind of hard to explain, but I still like the Robotham 8 inches per mile square better, because it's what we can observe, as opposed to really, really complex. Just if you Google search eccentricity-based mathematics, it is very, very complex, very complex.
I think the important thing to realize, you know, if you walk the radius of the Earth, which was 6,000 something miles supposedly, that math will tell you how far you actually walked. You dropped 6,000 miles down, but you're going to walk a lot further because you're walking along a curve, not a straight down.
Yeah, exactly right. Yep. Yeah, so pretty interesting stuff coming out of Bergen. Big shout out to Gare, and I've got one video from last week. I want to try to do just a quick video once a week over the course, and we started late because he said it had been like this. When I spoke with him, I believe it was Saturday the 23rd, so we were still very close to the summer solstice, and so I just want to see what it looks like on the 30th, and then again on the 7th. And if he's still getting 24-hour sun by the 7th, then I'll put a video out. And then I want to see it every weekend all the way to the end of August, because it goes all the way through July, all the way to the end of August, which to me just blew my mind,
I don't know.
especially at 60 degrees north.
Yeah, they should only get like what, a month at best.
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Man, okay, I'll be happy to see that. That'd be amazing. But
it's funny. It's funny because Americans are so incredulous about
sure.
this, because we're like, look at Alaska, and if you have to go to the Arctic Circle to get this, and they show us actual images of that. But yeah, according to this guy, and I have no reason to doubt him, I believe him 100%, until proven otherwise. He says everybody that lives in his town and who lives in that country knows it. It's not a secret. It just seems like we've been sort of not necessarily mistaught, but we've been taught something that it's like circumstantial. We're like I said, like they teach us about Alaska and they teach us about the 24-hour sun, and they say that it lasts for about a month during the northern summer solstice. But in terms of the South, like I said before, if we don't see the same thing for 90 days in the southern summer solstice, then, I mean, what are the Globers going to say then?
Well, the problem you're going to have is, the only thing we got is that live cam from McMurdo, because you can't go down there.
We've got to get rid of the Antarctic Treaty, and that was like one of the biggest things I wanted to talk about tonight, is how can we get into the public, not necessarily flat Earth, but getting rid of the Antarctic Treaty, because again, it would keep corporations out of our backyards, strip mining the mountains, fracking, drilling for oil, spilling oil, just terrorizing ecosystems that are right in our backyards when they could be doing that stuff in the Antarctic. And maybe that'll open up some doors from there. But
hey, speaking of the Antarctic, isn't South America the southernmost piece of landmass before you get to Antarctica?
Yes.
Yeah, it's very close.
So the southern tip, how far south is that? Isn't that like in the Antarctic Circle?
No. The southern tip of South America, I think, is somewhere around like 40, 45 degrees, something like that.
55.
That's it?
55.
Wow.
55, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so not close enough. But it should get more than, it gets like 16 hours a day of sunlight at the longest, I believe.
Right. And so if you were to go from there, if you were to start from there, all you'd have to do is go, it's just 6 degrees south.
I know. So what I'm saying is it just seems like they're close enough to get more than 16 hours at least.
Well, you'd think, wouldn't you?
Right. So that extra 6 hours is going to add, what, 8 more hours of sunlight? No way. You understand where I'm going with that? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
You actually have an advantage because the tip of Antarctica, which, you can take those tours to if you pay the money to go touch the penguins or whatnot, that is 64 degrees south. So if you scheduled, 3 people once a month, go down there for 3 months to see if the sun stays up. That's the closest I see that we can actually accomplish without, the whole can't go to the mainland. But that tip, they have tours to.
Right. Yeah. And I know that they clear out tourism that's only allowed during the summer, but I just don't remember, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember being taught about 90 days of daylight in the South. You know what I mean? And
no.
Well, they wouldn't, because they don't have to
someone
prove it.
would have a freaking video, man. And plus, they're not going to let you stay overnight there. I'm almost guaranteed.
Well, here's another thing too. This may sound really crazy, but they have the ability to create a false sun. They really do. It's some sort of technology. It's relatively new, but they can create a false sun that looks just like the sun in the sky. And what if like let's say we get this experiment going in the Antarctic. What if the people that are down there are actually in the, they're not getting 24 hours of sun, but they're putting up a fake sun? And again, this sounds crazy, but they only have to do it for small pockets of areas that are all over the Antarctic. And they've got the budget for it. I mean, just think of NASA's budget. Think of the budget. I mean, the non-existing programs that are not even acknowledged to exist,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And they've got the
it's
budget to pull this off to where it is that important to them to keep the globe Earth lie going that they really would go to any lengths to deceive us. And so, yeah,
true.
I think we really need to get rid of the Antarctic Treaty and just let the people really have at it in terms of the far south.
Yeah. Plus, isn't there a law, like kind of like a Murphy's Law, that if it can be built, then it will, or something like that? You know, if you can build an artificial sun, then yes, you will. But yeah, it's something you can have in your back pocket just in case you need to fool the right person at the right time, you know?
But I still got to ask the question: even if they could build one, how are they going to keep it up there?
I don't think it's a physical thing. It's some sort of beam projection. That's like it's a known technology. You can look it up, and they've got videos on what it looks like and how it works.
Yep.
But yeah, they can create fake stars. They can create fake suns, and I just wouldn't put it past them. But see, if we had the ability to have people all over the world just do a big occupy 61 degrees south during the southern solstice, right? I think it would become very obvious then that the globe model is much better than it ever was.
I just put a little link in your side chat there. I don't know if you saw this today. Fox News came out that Russia's launching the brightest star in the sky. I don't know if you saw that today or not.
I heard something about that. I'll see if I can find. Yeah, I see the link. I gotta X out all these Chrome notifications first. But yeah, I can try to share that. Hang on, let me see.
Man. Don't forget the shooting stars. There's a company that specializes in that too. Realistic meteors or whatever. Have you seen that?
I wouldn't be surprised. I have not seen it. I haven't. So
I want to say Jaren. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to read from this article. Russia may launch the brightest star in the sky. This is coming from Fox News. So, take it with a grain of salt. Russia is set to launch potentially the brightest artificial object in the night sky, which could outshine everything except for the moon starting next month. Mayak. Oh, and maybe I'll just share my screen and put this link in the chat. Hang on. Let me go over to the chat. Hey, all in the chat, here's the link to that article, and I'll do a screen share right quick. Got to use covert means so we don't get broken into. I don't even like the term sniped. Makes them sound, it gives them too much credit. I just say broken into because that's what they're doing. They're breaking into a place where they are not welcome when they do that. Okay, so screen share. Okay, so here's the article. Oh, that's the wrong browser. Wong browser. Here we go. So it looks like what is this going to be? Some sort of an object? There's some little description
it's a
here.
Satellite.
Oh, a satellite. Well, oh man.
I know.
Okay, so brighter than the moon. Blah blah blah. Mayak, a Russian CubeSat type of miniature satellite, will be fitted with solar reflectors. I would say that this is totally doable, and what they'll probably do if they do it is simply with weather balloons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you know what the only problem I still have with weather balloons is I'm just trying to figure out how to keep them up so long.
Oh man, they've got it's expensive to put together an amateur weather balloon, but if you put say $1 million into a weather balloon, you can get one that regulates its altitude, that regulates its stability. You can get them that'll stay up for quite a long time. And when they fall, recently there was a satellite that crashed somewhere in like I think it was South America.
Yes, it was a good little video.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not saying they don't put them up with balloons. That's not what I'm saying. I wonder about those ones. I mean, I guess they have to replace them or something. But like, for lack of better words, like the direct TV satellite that's supposedly over Texas or whatnot constantly to keep it up, and then replace it at the same time. I'm just thinking mathematics. I'm not saying they don't do that. I'm just wondering how they do it.
Well,
See what I'm saying?
didn't you guys watch the Rob Skiba video? Like he just did a series of those videos about the balloon launch that he did, and they were talking about how that guy, he talked to a company that was in charge of basically putting up all the balloons that like Google and all them put up. Like and they were saying that there's tens of thousands of balloons above us all the time, and that they stay up for like a certain amount of time, and when it's time for them to come down, they basically the balloon starts to drop in altitude and they'll go scoop it up, kind of like
Right. No, that's what I was saying. Yeah, I agree with you. I'm just trying to figure out the math of setting up all those balloons like that.
Oh man, but yeah, that's peanuts compared to satellites. I mean, satellites don't even exist. But when you're talking about physical balloons that aren't really that high, it's much easier than the idea of satellites.
Especially 30,000 whatever satellites they have up there since the 60s and 50s even. They all still work today. They all still work. Not one has been destroyed. Are you kidding me? I mean, what, maybe... Did they claim one ever got destroyed? Did they
they claim that space junk falls and stuff like that. And one big thing that this is one of my biggest arguments, if we want to talk about NASA and satellites a bit, is the whole ISS hoax. They should have had at least one instance where a micrometeor punctured the damn fuselage, right? And yes, they claim that one time a little micrometeor hit one of their solar panels or whatever. But I'm sorry, that thing's been up there over 15 years, and they say that there's super fast space debris and mini meteorites flying around in all directions up there, orbiting the Earth, crashing to Earth. That thing should have been a piece of Swiss cheese by now for 15 years.
It's tonnage. It's multiple tons of crap hits the Earth every day, supposedly.
Well, the problem with the ISS I still have is if you watch, remember that, what was it, a month ago or whatever, they put out that spacewalk video they had? The problem I had with it is watching it is all the Velcro they use and their connections, metal connections. When you're talking about temperature difference of 400 degrees plus and minus, I mean, I know metal, you heat it up, then you freeze it, it breaks, or vice versa.
The Ethernet cable one or the multiplexer one? Both classics. And yes, why is all this stuff on the outside? Why would they have to go get that? Just like the Apollo missions, they went to go get a film camera after they launched off from the moon in their pressurized capsule. And that's a little fact I didn't really know about until recently. And yeah, they did a spacewalk to go get a film canister. So they had to depressurize the whole Apollo fucking escape capsule on the way back to Earth to get a film canister and then come back in and repressurize, take their suits off. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and it's what it seems to me is they write in a lot of drama to make it sound like they because there's this whole cliche that like NASA scientists are the most brilliant people in the world, and like the whole movie Apollo 11 or Apollo 13 rather was about the ingenuity of the scientists and how they had to figure out how to save the mission with the simple parts that they had available on board. To me, it really is just more drama to draw people in. It's for publicity, and it's all just a hoax story. And so it makes sense that they would write stuff like that. Like, yeah, they risked their lives just to get this piece of film when with the original moon landings, they lost 700 reels and then they taped over them because they didn't have the budget for new frickin' reel-to-reels, right? I mean, give me a break. It's they contradict themselves so much. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
check.
yeah. No, that's what they do. I mean, here's my problem I've had with most of them. I'll say scientists is they'll explain something and it makes perfect sense. The way they explain certain things makes perfect sense until you find something else related to that thing, and then it doesn't make sense. They'll get contradictions, you know, like orbit
It's like a
patterns.
politician.
It's worse than a politician. Yes. Because, you know, I've done this many times before. You know, the ISS has to fly, what, 17,000 kilometers to maintain its orbit or whatever it is. But an ICBM missile flies twice as high at about the same speed. Then it should, by their math, leave orbit and not come back down. So that's when they start contradicting and just blow it off.
I don't even think they are supposed to fly as fast as that. I don't, because I was looking up missiles, projectiles, everything, and we've never fired any projectile faster than 17,500 miles an hour, which is supposedly how fast we got a football stadium up there.
Well, right,
around.
but here's the issue on it. ICBM flies twice as high as the ISS. If it's flying at that speed, by NASA's math, it should leave orbit.
True.
Because it's going too fast at that altitude. So, but that's what I'm saying.
Right?
You take their two pieces of math that you don't really put together. When you put them together, you have a contradiction, and they won't explain it.
Yeah, it'd have to be like nosing down or some shit.
But they don't have thrusters. It's a ballistic solution, they say, but it wouldn't come back down at that speed.
Well, you know, another thing that's sort of related to that is just the fallacy of orbital mechanics. But you know, they claim Pluto, which is like an exoplanet. It used to be a planet, then it wasn't, now it is. But there's lots of little planetoids that are about the same distance as Pluto, whatever, according to the heliocentric model. And Halley's Comet, you know, comes around every 71 or 72 years, and it's very, very small and very, very low density compared to Pluto. However, they claim that it gets almost to Pluto, like over 90% of the distance to Pluto, traveling at something like 175,000 miles an hour when it's closest to the sun. And that darn thing should leave orbit, if anything else, because frankly, a teeny tiny little comet that's like 1/1000th the size of Pluto wouldn't have the mass needed to reciprocate the gravitational relationship between the sun and Pluto. And so, yeah, I mean, you see contradictions like that all the time. And I do see what you're saying. Orbit is a very fine line that they have to walk. And, you know, you have to take into account velocity and trajectory. And so the wider the trajectory, you know, they only claim that the moon goes 2288 miles an hour, right? And so that it has a very wide wide trajectory, but a slow velocity. And the ISS, yeah, I think they go, what, 17.5, and they're at, what do they claim, 250 miles away? And yeah, I've never compared that to ICBMs, but that's an interesting thought. I mean, maybe I'll look into it more.
Yeah, okay. So I've looked into the orbital mechanics. I've actually played around with the old, like, man, I want to say 10 years ago with like a little program that lets you diddle around with making planets and orbits and whatnot. And it's even in there with no air resistance or anything. It's almost impossible to make your own Earth Moon creation, and especially have an object enter in like to the sun and then orbit it. You might be able to get a few orbits, but
Oh, we lost him.
Yeah, I think we lost you, Ace. Yeah, I was following along when he comes back in. Did you come back in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we lost you there for a second. You were saying about orbital mechanics.
Yeah. So just looking into the whole heliocentric model, you know, they have a good equation for the moon, like you were talking about going around the Earth, and it makes sense with the amount of gravity they say that, you know, the Earth has and the speed that the moon's going. But it never factors in all the other planets and the sun. You know, there's nothing. That's not an equation anyone could do. You would need a freaking supercomputer to balance all the different gravitational forces that are supposedly going on. Because, you know, they have an equation for Mars around the sun. But how about when Mars is in line with Venus and Earth? You know, they're all like in line. Why aren't they tugging on each other and kind of scooching in, you know? And how can Halley's Comet be 72 years like clockwork? How does it never get changed? That little thing never gets thrown off course while it's out there for way too freaking long to be attracted back to the sun. That should debunk the globe model in anyone's mind right there, that a comet can supposedly go out that far.
I did a whole video. I've done a couple videos focusing on Halley's Comet because you're right. It is a very good argument against the heliocentric model. And you know, a lot of the trolls that they're always like, well, you're not allowed to debunk the heliocentric model. You have to prove flat Earth. And it's like, okay, well, there is no curvature and that's proven, and it's not spinning and that's proven. And so now all we have to do is just rip to shreds the heliocentric model because it's wrong. And anything that's wrong will necessarily be ripped to shreds. And it's like when we've been studying this now as rational adults, skeptically for a couple years now, at least as far as I'm concerned, I've found just countless examples of where the heliocentric model doesn't account for observable reality. It's an epic failure, and yet, you know, globeheads somehow expect us to come up with a working model of the universe when the frickin' globe model is just so preposterous. And so why are we to be held to a higher standard when in fact the globers can't even show curvature or simple axial rotation? No evidence for any of that. You know, and I guess, you know, bold claims demand high preponderance of evidence, and I'm here to tell you that the evidence for flat Earth is just it's just overwhelming. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I do want to say this. My only problem is I'm going to put it right there. I'm not going to be able to prove how Halley's Comet works and all this other stuff because I can't go into space with my spaceship and check it out and measure it. So I like to concentrate on things that we can prove, you know, actual measurement of the curve on the ground, the stupid gravity thing. But the problem with gravity is scientists don't even know how it works, so it doesn't matter. But concentrating on things that we can actually prove to start with, because let's face it, we can come up with they're going to come up with some excuse for how the comet comes back, whether it be, quote, dark matter or whatever other garbage they've come up with that holds the universe together. Something that we can't prove ourselves. You know what I'm saying? So I do believe, although we need to question some of these things, that we still have to concentrate on things that we can prove to open the public's eyes, you know? Because all it takes is Mr. NDT to say, well, that's because of dark matter. Well, I can't prove that. So, you know what I mean?
You know, but the thing is, though, is flat Earth is so simple. We've got pictorial evidence, like the latest one that I've seen and put out there a little bit of 273-mile distant mountain range. We've got the famous one from Joshua Nowicki of Chicago skyline from about 60 miles away. Then we've got all of the high altitude weather balloon footage. Simple experiment shows that the Earth isn't spinning, and we can do that now that we have aviation, something that was not available to the ancient Greeks or Columbus or Newton or any of those guys. And you know, we've got the technology for anyone to easily prove it. But the problem is, though, the reason why it's so difficult to get this across to people is because, and we all know this, but it's because of the programming that we've all been subjected to since we were just little children. We weren't able to argue logically. And the same thing goes for our parents and our teachers. And the same thing goes for their parents and their teachers. It is only just in this generation where lots and lots of people are looking at this again skeptically as adults. And frankly, it's just wonderful. Because, I mean, could you imagine, like, what if flat Earth, what would you be doing right now if flat Earth hadn't come into your life and changed your life? I can't imagine. I wouldn't want to even, I wouldn't want to exist if I didn't know this truth. I would not want to go back to sleep as a globie. Anybody else?
Even the trolls agree.
How do you mean?
They'd rather be in our hangouts too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and you know, I'm glad you mentioned that because I noticed we've got about 260 people watching, and it's funny because 88 thumbs up 21 thumbs down. So there's actually 21 people sitting around watching this show that I don't even know if we're halfway through it, and they've already decided they don't like it. So if you're out there listening and you do like it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you don't mind, I'd appreciate it, because I know that there couldn't possibly be this many people watching and that many people not liking it. Change the channel. Go watch something else. We're talking about flat Earth here. If you want to believe you live stuck to the side of a spinning ball, then go watch all the Star Wars movies back to back, and you'll have all sorts of fun fantasies about Jabba the Hutt and Luke Skywalker. And you can go on telling your children that Santa Claus is a real thing, and the Easter Bunny is going to put eggs in the garden, and you can tell them the Tooth Fairy is going to put a quarter under their pillow. But if you continue teaching them about the globe, then you're necessarily teaching your children something wrong. You're teaching others something wrong. And if you just look at flat Earth skeptically and with an open mind, you will find that the Earth is not a spinning sphere, and you were all tricked since you were toddlers. And isn't it funny that the globeheads love to hang out in flat Earth hangouts or chats? It's just really weird to me.
Just for a disclaimer, I still love Star Wars. It's a fantasy, I agree.
I do.
I still watch. My kids watch it. They do flat Earth, but I still like it.
Hey, you're talking about Santa Claus and all that, and the globe comes with its own mascot for kids, and that's freaking aliens, and being terrified of being abducted by freaking aliens when you're like 8 years old, trying to go to sleep at night, or scared of nuclear bombs fucking going off for no reason, all these. It's not just Santa Claus.
Well, what's scary, though, this is kind of the scary part, though, is aliens were always sort of a fun, possible thing that, it's kind of creepy. And I was always fascinated with aliens ever since, as long as I can remember. I was checking out the 2 or 3 books that they had in the library on aliens, and I just was always fascinated with it. But I realized that it's fantasy in the heliocentric model, because frankly, you can't find a planet like Earth in the vast universe, and even if you could find it, you could never travel there, not in 100 lifetimes, even if you could go half the speed of light. And so to me, it was always just fantasy, although I reserved the possibility of the universe being teeming with life. But however, now that we know that the Earth is flat, a lot of people automatically assume that it's for some reason, I'm not sure why, but a lot of people assume that it's an enclosed Truman Show dome situation, which may be the case, but there also may be much, much, much more land out there that we're not aware of. And if that's the case, then visitors from other worlds are suddenly no longer strictly in the realm of fantasy, but are actual viable possibilities. And so that actually makes the whole thing a little bit more frightening, especially if, like, let's just say hypothetically, there are other worlds, there are other geological pockets of land masses and water that have their own little solar systems, in quotes. If that's the case, then if their inhabitants become intelligent and their inhabitants become anything like people, then we really better learn about who these things are and try to make friends with them, of course. But it appears like, so many people have seen UFOs, and I think a lot of that is government craft. But I don't think all of it is. I think that there really may be something to the UFO phenomenon that is extraterrestrial. And obviously not extraterrestrial in the sense that it's coming from another planet, but extraterrestrial in the sense that it's coming from another terra firma area on the plane that we're not aware of. And if they have been sort of observing us, which is what I've thought for the longest time, it's like, they're obviously not here to kill us. Maybe they're just observing us. Like, what if we could go to another planet? I don't think that we would necessarily try to muck around with their natural, quote unquote, evolution, but we would certainly at least observe them at the very least, and maybe go further than that. And so to me, you've got literally just millions of people all over the world who have seen UFOs. I've seen UFOs.
It's Star Trek rules. Star Trek, yeah.
but you know, the point is though, and I know I'm like talking a lot, but I guess what my point is that I don't think we should be afraid of extraterrestrials, but I do think that we should acknowledge that that as flat earthers, extraterrestrials are now theoretically possible, whereas in a heliocentric mindset, extraterrestrials are theoretically not possible. It's not in a million billion years. And so another thing too, you know, people that are into aliens and into UFOs for whatever reason usually tend to be interesting people with an open mind that are skeptical, but there's just so much you know, propaganda and misinformation out there about aliens. It's a whole thing in and of itself. And so if we say, well, flat earth equals aliens are a hoax, then we're really excluding a huge potential part of the flat earth community, because there are so many popular UFO channels that if they knew that this whole UFO phenomenon is actually plausible now that we know the earth is flat, that could help spread the flat earth message to a whole nother cross section of the culture that is right now just mesmerized by the concept of theoretical aliens. So thoughts on that?
Well, you got Richard Byrd going to Antarctica and other stories besides just what he found related to the Earth. But
I think
you got the Nazis down there.
I think the important thing, real quick, is just we can't prove or disprove them. So there's no we can't disprove them. Just doesn't mean they come from Venus. We don't know where they come from. They're just here. So whatever they might be, we don't know. We just have to acknowledge.
Morgile,
hi, Antonio.
Hey, Ryan. Hi, guys. Morgile, you read The Iron Republic.
Yes, I put that on my channel.
Well, there's one of these possible other areas. I mean, if that thing was fabricated recently, then whoever it was that fabricated it is so clued up on so many levels. The Cymatica, the Hebrew lettering, that there's a tonal in shape, all these kinds of things that somehow have been, if this was invented recently, it was somehow put in there and then disguised and hidden so nobody can find its source. Because if something's planted in there, I mean, even silent weapons for quiet wars, that can be traced to a point when it made its way online. So where the hell did this thing appear from? Because it reads to me like the first part, the 2/3 of it is written in one voice and the last part is written in a different voice, in a different style. And it sounds to me like it's a genuine thing. But I don't know.
I'm not familiar with it. Maybe if you could put a link in the group chat, maybe I can pull it up.
So what, to the Iron Republic?
Well, no, like what specifically? Okay, so you're talking about the work itself. I'm not sure what specifically you're talking about. I mean, I'm familiar with the Iron Republic, but
yeah, of course, yeah, you read it. In the Iron Republic, it covers things like Cymatica, like how the Hebrew alphabet, which is how the lettering happens in the office or anywhere that has lettering, is phonetically linked to the sound that creates the shape. These things have been discovered only just recently.
Right. So, yeah, I'm familiar with that as well. Okay, right.
Yeah, so I'm saying if that thing was not genuine, then whomever made it is an absolute genius, but it looks to me like it's a genuine thing. And it's difficult to verify, but the explanations of what's outside Antarctica in the Iron Republic, it's amazing. And this could be one of the sources of the UFOs.
Yeah, it very well could be, and yeah, I totally get what you're saying now. And for those of you out there who aren't familiar with the Iron Republic, essentially it was a book that was well, it was a series of articles in Florida Magazine from it was around 1902. And it was basically the writings or the journal or the story of a man who did a South Polar expedition in I think 1895, 1896. And basically, the long story short is he had a failed political campaign, and he was of money, and so he sold his house and auctioned his things off and bought a seafaring vessel, and he wanted to spend the rest of his life in the just exploring the North Arctic. However, the captain that he hired was much more familiar with the southern seas, and so he decided to go and travel and explore the Antarctic. And long story short, they found what they described as an opening in what was, as far as the eye can see, a wall of ice. Now, I know there's a lot of debate going around as to whether or not there's an ice wall 360 degrees around flat Earth. And this is besides the point. We do know that there are definitely portions of the far south that appear to be large, impenetrable ice walls. And that's exactly what this gentleman described. But they found an opening in it, and it looked like that opening they could traverse through. And so they wanted to get a better look at it. They angled the nose of their ship towards it and crept kind of close just to see if they might could get a path through. And then suddenly either a gust of wind or a strong current pulled them into this opening in the crack, and they went many, many miles through, keep going south like they're going towards the Antarctic, basically going to 90 degrees south. And eventually it opens up into a large, calm sea. And the writer had suspected that they had popped out on the other side of the globe, right? Because he, at that point, believed in the globe. But it turns out they had found an entire another landmass continent that was temperate. It wasn't, it was calm and temperate and warm once you got away from the ice area. And there was a civilization there. And this civilization was essentially a breakaway civilization from during the time when the Americas were being colonized, and so what happened is they were coming over from Europe over, west towards the Americas, towards North or South America, and they somehow, a lot of ships had got lost in a storm. They lost their reckoning, and they ended up way far south. And they also somehow ended up accidentally discovering, this had been maybe 100 or 200 years, few hundred years prior, and they had essentially decided not to return because they had enough. They had plenty of people. They were developing technologies. They had a system of government, which is all described in detail in the book. It is sort of a socialist government, but some pretty interesting ideas are put forward. Also, some technologies. And again, this was in 1902, speaking of an 1895 voyage. So he was speaking of flying machines when the Wright brothers hadn't even discovered flying machines yet. So this, that adds a layer of interest to it. But they spoke English because, again, these were English people, and they had other language-speaking people as well. But the people spoke English, and they had, you just got to read the book. It was is really awesome. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's true, but to me, it's 100% plausible, and I reserve that it may very well be true. And if that's the case, then how many other worlds are there, beyond the South Pole, or even within the North Pole or beyond the North Pole? The plane of the Earth, or the plane with which in the Earth is nestled, is probably not the end of the plane. I think that we've got imaginary lines for the equator and for Capricorn and for Cancer and the Arctic circles. Those are imaginary lines. They don't actually exist in reality. And so what's beyond that? We people tend to think of, well, something has to have an edge, like a coin or a dartboard. And perhaps the plane has an edge, but it doesn't seem that it's necessarily just south of our South Arctic. And so, yeah, it's totally interesting stuff, man. Totally interesting.
I do got to correct one thing real quick.
Yeah.
So just for the record, because history always halfway lies to us, you realize the Wright brothers weren't the first one to fly, right?
Oh,
The
really?
first-
I wasn't aware.
Yeah, so supposedly the first powered sustained flight, and I believe it was probably with a balloon and all that, was in 1852 in
So what
France.
they had a weather balloon attached?
No,
It
no, it was
was,
a hot air balloon.
it was basically
Wow.
like a Zeppelin, not the Zeppelin, but like an early version of it, where they had a hot air balloon and he was attached to it and had some props on the back. It was Henry Gifford, flew
Right.
15 miles in France. But this was in 1852, so
There's
flying
also
machines were starting.
there's also the possibility that there were other terrestrial people flying around that were, you know, using the Nazca lines, because otherwise those things made no sense. But I wanted to point something out. I studied South American history for a while. The Maya, the Inca, the Aztecs, these people, their ancestors, so the first people in Central and South America, they explain where the Olmecs and the Toltecs, one came to the east coast, one came to the west. They arrived with a fully developed culture, with ceramics, with pyramid building, and they built pyramids on the beaches, by the way. They just arrived there. There's no history of them having been elsewhere on the earth in some other continent. They just arrived there, developed a huge society that went on for thousands of years and disappeared. Well, I say they came from some other side of the ice, because they literally arrived. They just arrived. And we're not talking Atlantis kind of possible myth. We're talking real people who built pyramids, and they were called the Olmecs and the Toltecs. And you can look into them, because there's no history of them having come from Indonesia or Africa. They just arrived there. So where did these people come from? And then when they left, where did they leave? Because of the vast bulk of them left. They weren't killed by the Spanish or by disease. They just left. So, like, come on, where did they go?
Yeah, very, very interesting, man. It really is interesting. And, you know, to me, and a lot of people say, oh, you're a Christian and you don't believe in the dome. And, you know, yes, I do identify as a Christian. You know, I follow the teachings of Christ, and I try to live by the 10 Commandments. And, you know, I'm no perfect angel. I've made mistakes, and I try to atone for them and mend my ways and everything. But, you know, the whole idea of a firmament being a glass dome, it's a theory. It's not even it's not even spoken of in Genesis. It's simply referred to as an expanse. And so to marry the idea of a, you know, Truman Show glass dome enclosure to flat Earth is just boxing us back in. It's just boxing us back in. And
Yeah.
it's
Sorry, but the sky seems to be a plane. So if
Yes.
it is a firmament and expanse, it would be the ceiling. That doesn't mean it comes down and touches somewhere in Antarctica.
I think we should realize that, I mean, the dome, maybe not, whatever, but I think the point is those are theories like most other things until we can prove them. But the
Right.
real question goes back down to, is it flat or is it a ball? I mean, everybody's just like the alien things. People are going to say they're fallen angels. People are going to say they're from underground. They're going to say they're from somewhere else on the plane. Someone's going to say they're from Jupiter. The question is it's not a matter of denying them or not until we can specifically deny something. You know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's a good theory, a good idea. Go with it. But let's get back to the point of, well, whether it's a dome or not, is the Earth flat? That's
Yeah.
what we need to
Well,
prove.
and see what my point is though is because there's a lot of flat earthers out there. I don't know if it's 9 out of 10, but maybe half of them. If you say they start talking about the dome, and you ask them, well, what do you mean the dome? And they'll say the glass dome in the sky. Then you sort of have to have a conversation with them that, you know, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with flat Earth, and it may not be there. And then of course.
Yeah.
You know, what about the firmament? And you know, the firmament makes a lot of sense to me in the context where it's dividing the waters above from the waters below. So if you're standing on dry land, there's water below your feet, and the clouds are definitely made of water. Sometimes it rains, so the skies are definitely filled with water. Even ancients would know that, And so separating the waters above from the waters below makes perfect sense. And to say that expanse is somehow translated into firmament, meaning then God said there's a dome, you know, I think that that's just a wrong path to go down. But at the same time, you're right. I mean, if there is a dome, then that's going to be easily either proven or disproven. And if we marry the concept of a dome to flat Earth as a necessary part of flat Earth, and then the dome is disproven, well, then by default, flat Earth is disproven in the public eye. Does that make sense?
That's why I said even I mean, people that believe in the dome and all that, that's fine, but you can't, because it's not. I mean, even Mark Sargent has said, "Hey, if there's no dome, oh well." It's his belief and idea, and that's fine. Lots of people have the different beliefs, but we need to not hold. I mean, that's what science does. Let's think about it. That's what scientists do. We know what the center of the core of the Earth is because we believe it's this, this, and this. Can you prove it? No, but we've gotten tests, and that's what we believe. That's what we got to make sure the flat earthers, we don't do that. We have ideas, we have theories, which are good because that's how you experiment and find things. But if you have a theory, you have to realize there's a chance you could be wrong.
Brian,
that's okay. Yeah.
This is why I was saying, dude, pass me a link. I wanted to cover two things. One that explains the flatness. The other is this very point, okay? We have to think. I've been looking at Jordan Peterson, okay? He's explaining that postmodernists do not believe in logic and they do not believe in science, okay? Now, I'm familiar. I've used it myself. Lots of flat earthers use the word scientism to dismiss science. We have to be savvy, and for the public eye, we should not do that because it paints us as science deniers. If we want to explain what we mean, if we want a term, we should say theorism, which, by the way, sounds more like theology. That's idea of nebulousness, okay, which is what it is. We don't deny chemistry. We don't deny biology. We deny the theories behind those things. So
I'm going to put my I'm going to put my quote out that I'm going to as a trademark. Science doesn't lie. Scientists do.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Yes, they do. They certainly do, especially the peer review papers that turn out to not have any peer review. But what I'm saying, what I'm trying to say to people is when you're talking with globelings and you use the word scientism, they will paint you as a completely ignorant person, and they will turn the conversation into your denial of science, in inverted commas, and they will say, what about your laptop? What about cars? And it will distract the conversation. If you say theorism, they can't distract it. You've already said, you're saying, I accept all the things that are actually bona fide and true and real, like computers and cars, but the theories behind a load of the bullshit that hasn't created anything from the theories. There's theories out there that have not created anything whatsoever, including gravitational theory. There's nothing that uses gravitational theory, nothing at all. So
satellites do. Don't forget satellites. But planes don't have to worry about it at all, nor do they have to worry about time dilation, but satellites do.
Yes, yeah. Well, this is the thing. So I'm just positing this, okay? Theorism is the thing that I would myself totally dismiss and call it like religious, not even religious, because that's kind of poo-pooing religion. There's a lot of validity to religious thinking. Religious thinking is not just a specific worship of a specific god. Is
more like spirituality. I always use the phrase religion, and sometimes I mean spirituality.
Yeah, but it's a useful thing and it's a good thing. It's when you look at the bad things, then you're saying that's not religion. That's a brainwashing, fanaticism, a whole bunch of other stuff. But if you look into the religions of the people that are doing the bad things, you see all the goodness that the other moderate guys are doing. So it's a big thing, that the whole labels and religion and whatnot. But I wanted to cover one more thing, and this is for Jaren with the Star Trails, and for any flat earther who wants to discuss this with globelings, okay? John, you've been doing a lot of the heliocentric model debunking. John Savage and Rob Durham have demonstrated with the gyroscope that there's no apparent drift. We can combine the gyroscope with Polaris and demonstrate both things. Okay, if you engage with a thought experiment, it's just a description. Picture yourselves lining up a gyroscope, a super precision gyroscope like John Savage and Rob Durham, lining it up on your windowsill facing north, right under Polaris. And you're going to place your camera so that you can see the gyroscope and Polaris just above your gyroscope. Now, somewhere above Polaris, there'll be a star. And because Polaris is in the center of your camera, that star is going to rotate. That's how the gyroscope should drift. Okay? It should drift to match that star. And what you'll find is the gyroscope will not drift and Polaris will remain in the center of the camera. And what you've done is you've said, the Earth is not turning. That's why the gyroscope's not moving. And the fact that it's not turning, demonstrated by the gyroscope, tells you it is the stars that are moving.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying, and especially when you get into the and thinking of the globe Earth as a gyroscope itself, you know, you have the alleged precession, axial precession, which is that wobble of the Earth allegedly, and in that case, then we shouldn't have a central North Star for even 100 years. We should constantly have new North Stars because of that alleged wobble. But somebody in the chat mentioned on the previous topic we were talking about, this is from Tendon the Tank Engine. I thought this was interesting. Is it possible that liquid helium is the dome or a ceiling? And I've thought about that a lot. And I really think that anything dome shaped would be the magnetic field of the Earth, because frankly, magnetic fields always form sort of toroidal or dome shapes. And I think it's very likely that, you know, the lower density gases like hydrogen and helium, you know, they always find their way up higher than all the other gases. And I think it's very sensible to assume that at some point they may coalesce and sort of turn into a liquid form, or possibly even a sort of semi-frozen form. And when we see things like real meteor showers, it could actually be raining condensed and precipitating hydrogen or helium, and that's why it actually sparks when it comes to the atmospheres, because it's you know, it's a volatile chemical reaction that's got a lot of heat, heat in the form of friction being applied to it.
Hey, John.
Oh, go ahead, Candy.
Someone in the chat was asking what was the book you were talking about, and I was gone, so I don't know. I just got back.
The book that I was talking about, it's called, it's not a book, it's a series of articles that were in Florida Magazine, and the name of the thing is The Iron Republic, and I've got it on my channel. If you just search The Iron Republic, it's I've got it all in audiobook format. I spent a long time on it. I think it's pretty nicely done, and I think it's about 5 hours, so it's something that will definitely put you to sleep if you wanted to. Audiobooks just put me to sleep. I always lay down and listen to audiobooks if I'm trying to sleep. So there you go. Yeah, The Iron Republic.
On the sort we were just talking about with the dome and the firmament and whatever, I think a lot of people push on that for one reason. If you believe mainstream science with, quote, space being a vacuum, the question is how does the Earth's atmosphere not get sucked out?
Yeah, that's a big, huge problem for Team Helio, and they don't address it. They say, "Oh, gravity explains it perfectly," and it really doesn't, because gravity is supposedly an acceleration, and the variables are mass and proximity. And so if you've got a single molecule of, let's just say it's helium, that is directly adjacent to the Kármán line, or that's where space begins and the atmosphere ends, if you got a single molecule of hydrogen or helium up there, that does not have the mass necessary to reciprocate the gravitic or gravitational relationship with the Earth. And so we should technically be losing all of our barometric pressure constantly. But they say, oh, the Earth's just large enough and it's just in the right spot relative to the sun. It's in the Goldilocks zone. But if you study fluid dynamics, even for 10 minutes, you'll know that what they're claiming in terms of the gases of the Earth being held fast adjacent to a near perfect vacuum of space is absolute folly. It's ridiculous, and I really can't believe that all of the scientists in the world didn't figure this out hundreds of years ago. I mean, there's people who dedicate their lives to the study of fluid dynamics, and I guess they specialize on that so much they never think to apply it to reality. It is just absurd. It really is crazy.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, even
Sorry.
easier to explain, just real quick, is an airplane can overcome gravity by creating a low pressure over its wings. That's how airplanes fly, right?
Yep.
So if an airplane, a 1,000-pound vehicle, can, with lower pressure, defeat gravity, then how does the vacuum of space, which is a much lower pressure, not suck it out? That's
Well,
just
it's
my
demonstrable too. It's demonstrable. You can make yourself a glass, an aquarium, and inject or push in a colored gas, and then remove the lid. And what will happen to the gas? And that's in your room, which is not a vacuum and it's not near vacuum. So what will happen to that pressurized gas? It will leave. Now, you can try it again without the lid and trying injecting the pressurized gas into this aquarium. It's not going to happen. It's going to continuously leave. So this is what we have with the sky on the globe Earth. You have no barrier there, and they don't even bother describing the boundary conditions between the point at which there's atmosphere and the point at which there isn't any longer any atmosphere. They haven't bothered, and they're tentatively trying to stopgap this problem. They are actually paying attention to what we're doing. Their theory, their tentative theory right now, is that the sun's radiation and electromagnetism is pushing down on the Earth, and that is somehow equilibrating the lack of pressure from the vacuum. So that's kind of pushing back, but it's only tentative. They're not publicizing it very much.
Yeah, and that wouldn't work very well at night. That wouldn't work very well on the night side of the world.
Exactly. Not only that, but if the pressure was pushing down on the Earth, on the surface that's facing the Earth, absolutely fine. What about the Terminator? At that point, it would be ripping right past the Earth and going onwards. You know, so it's not just that the night side wouldn't have this pressure pushing on the borders of it, it would have that energy pulling past it. So no, it's just it's an ad hoc theory that they've just put out there quickly. You're not hearing anybody talking about it because, you know, they've quickly realized, actually, shit, this wouldn't actually work at all. So, but listen, guys, I'm going to drop. I just wanted to come in to say the theorism thing, because scientism is going to paint us as incredibly ignorant, and we know what we mean, but globelings don't know what we mean. We mean theorism, the belief that all theories are ipso facto truths. It's like, no, they're not. That's why they're theories. If they were truths, there wouldn't be theories anymore. So that's what I wanted to say. And the gyroscope lined up to Polaris. The minute somebody videos that, it's finished for the Star Trail argument, showing that the Earth is static and flat. John, everybody else, I'm bowing out of YouTube for a while. I'm going to carry on listening and enjoying what you guys are doing. And thank you very much for having me. Brian, we'll talk later. The site that you passed me wasn't what I think you thought you were passing me. Right. John, Candy, Karen, Brian, and Ace, see you all later. Thank you.
Later, man. And yeah, that's a good point.
Good night.
Bye, Antonio.
Bye.
Yeah, that's a good point in terms of scientism. I see what he's saying, but you know, scientism really is a fitting term because it's. But I agree that we need to make the distinction. I mean, there is practical science, there is technology, there's definitely, like, you know, biology and computer sciences and just all sorts of sciences that are great. They're wonderful. But what we're talking about is strictly theoretical physics or theoretical astrophysics. That's what, you know, really is the crux of scientism. It's a religious belief in all of this ridiculous dogma that people don't even know that they're in a religion. That's how powerful the religion of scientism is. But yeah, maybe changing the vernacular to theorism might be better, but then you're dealing with the Tavistock weaponized term of conspiracy theory, and so you're falling back into that sort of, I mean, either way, it's always sort of like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But yeah, good point, though, I think. So, yeah.
Chirp, chirp, chirp.
Yeah. So does anybody have any new research, any topics anybody wants to talk about?
I'm still stuck on the whole time zone thing.
Time zones are man-made.
How are you stuck on time zones still?
Do y'all know that China has one time zone?
Huh?
They have one time zone across the entire continent. Well, not Asia, but China. The whole, I mean, it's huge. It's with the same size as the United States, maybe a little smaller, a little bit bigger.
Yeah,
but if you're on one side, you are.
The sun works the same as it does in America. They just, I guess, for whatever reason, want to be different. But like, if you're on the west and east coast, you're going to get a big difference on when the sun is at noon. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I see what you're saying, though, Candy, too. Like, maybe because we know that the maps are wrong. So, like, what if China, and instead of, let's just say, Eurasia, all of Russia and China, we normally think of it as being pretty much aligned east to west. But what if, because of all this strange magnetic declination and the fact that the maps are screwed, and I'm just postulating this, I'm not saying it's true, but what if it's lined up more north to south and we just don't know it? Then it might make a little bit more sense that it's one time zone. But I don't know. I've never been to China, and a lot of observation would have to go into it. But what I did think was weird. A couple years ago, it was after I started doing flat Earth, so maybe it was just a year ago. For the longest time, the east coast of the U.S. was Greenwich Mean Time minus 0500. And the only reason I know that is because I had to, I set up user accounts all the time for people that worked for a company that I contracted for. And so whenever I set up their user accounts, I had to pick their time zone so that appointments and stuff would be relayed to them in the correct time. And the East Coast, Eastern U.S. was always for years GMT -5. And just recently, like in the last year, they changed it to GMT -4. But according to people that I talked to in other parts of the world, that their time zone didn't change. So how the hell does one change and not the other?
That's a Mandela effect,
I can explain that. So time zones are strictly man-made up for what they want to be, because it's like daylight savings time and everything else. Arizona doesn't have daylight savings time,
right?
But Colorado does. Time zones are made up of how the people want to run their actually are made for trains or something. But it's just made up for how they want to run their country. Time zones are strictly man-made. Nothing scientifically, mathematically, or anything to do with them at all. Nothing. It's just what they chose to call their area.
It has to do with, the path of the sun, of course, but what I just find interesting about it is, yeah, it's man-made, but because see, the whole thing about the spinning globe Earth is it has to work perfectly like a frickin' finely tuned Swiss watch, right? All the little inner working mechanisms, according to them, work so perfectly that they can predict eclipses in such a chaotic system. I mean, if you really take, the 10 million foot view of the little heliocentric system, you've got us little observers spinning around on a ball, and that ball's going around the sun on the ecliptic, but then the sun's going traveling at a 60-degree angle to the ecliptic 10 times faster than we are, and then the galaxy's traveling at a whole nother angle, and we're going around in circles around the galaxy at the same time, according to them, and yet every little thing happens in perfect repeating cycles. And I'm sorry, but to have all that stuff work and then have to change time zones around in different places, it doesn't make sense on their perfect little switch fine-tuned watch globe. Whereas if the sun is not what we've been told, and we know the Earth's flat, and there are some variables in the behavior of the sun, then they would have to go to pretty great lengths to cover that up and make, sort of nonchalantly brush that stuff under the rug. But I mean, I just think it was very strange on a globe Earth theory to change the East Coast from GMT -5 to 4, and at the same time not change other places in the world. It's to me, it's
I know it's
more
crazy.
evidence of what I'm saying is it's more evidence of the sun behaving erratically than it is of proof of one or the other thing. But anyway, go ahead.
I'm just saying, time zones have nothing to do with the sun. It really doesn't. China wanted one country time. That's why their entire country has one time zone. That's their choice. That's what they picked. Doesn't matter. The sun can rise at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the far west side because they've chose to do Beijing, I think, or whatever. Yes, they have to do math to figure out. But I'm just saying, time zones themselves, they really have nothing. And I think you're wasting your time to try to figure out a time zone, what Eastern Standard, Mountain Standard, or Arizona is to do with the sun.
It's not so much about
Because they don't.
Well, I mean, we have 24-hour. We have 24 hours in a day, and each time zone is supposed to more or less represent an hour of overhead sunlight at noon, right? And so that's where they get
Well,
that.
that's what I was saying. They don't, because like China doesn't do that. Arizona doesn't do that.
Right.
We switch our daylight time because, you know, in the winter we want the kids to go to school during the sunlight, not in the dark. Arizona never switches. I mean, you go one state away from Arizona and you switch your time zone an hour off. It's strictly a man-made thing. It's a ridiculous thing, I got you. But you can't use time zones to prove sun movement and everything else. Because the other thing too is, you said yourself, it's 24 hours, right? But we're pretty sure the sun goes around less than 24 hours. Or is it more? Whatever it is. Because that's why they add, quote, that leap year and everything else, you know.
Yeah, well, you've got the sidereal day and the solar day, and so the sun is like, I think it's like just like 2 tenths of a minute off or something like that.
Right, that's why I said you can't use the man-made time zone thing up to try to prove anything, minus man's an idiot. So
yeah,
we reference it halfway, but you can't say, well, it's noon here. And I mean, you think about a time zone period. If you're on the far East Coast when it just comes up, then 4 hours away, it's not exactly the same with the sun movement. They just picked the size and distance and everything else that they wanted to. I mean, if you're in Kentucky, you can have a time zone change if you're a mile away. So it's just
they're not scientifically
right. They're not. They're
there you go.
Ready to run trains or something, you know, just to get a standard time, so when they know the train comes through. So it's nothing to. I don't feel it's nothing to. You should not be trying to use time zones to prove the sun flat or anything else, because it's going to just throw you off.
Right, but I do think that it's strange still, though, that they would change GMT -5 to GMT -4 on the East Coast, because to me it just shows that they are that they're sort of changing the rules as they go, and they're changing things around to make the model continue to work. That's just me, but yeah, I mean, I understand that the time zone lines are all haphazard because they've drawn them around town so that it's not like 5 o'clock in one half of a town and 6 o'clock in the other half of the town. So yeah, the time zones are all weird drawing, and I can understand, you know, communist China deciding that they're not going to have that sort of separation between their areas. So makes some sense. Okay.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, they changed the time zones. They went to UTC because it's more accurate or something, and GMT now has daylight savings time. But it's strictly, yes, they're screwing up and everything else, but I don't think we should use that, try to use that to prove anything, because man changes it, so we can't use it as, quote, sorry for the bad word, a scientific method to figure things out, because it's a variable that man changes constantly.
Right. Yeah, just a big thanks and shout out to Tora Fan, super chat $2. Thank you so much. Wow, appreciate that. And yeah, the thing to me about the sun is, like, you know, we grow up thinking that we know what it is. Like, we know that it's a ball with, you know, almost 800,000 miles in diameter, and it's this hot and it's this far away, and we think that we have a really good understanding of it. But when you come down to reality on flat Earth, we really don't have any idea what the sun is. And, you know, I'm not 100% convinced that the sun is a physical object even. We're just seeing an instance of light where it's an omnidirectional light, yes, but we don't know what the source of that light is. And so, yeah, I agree with you that, you know, we can't really do much with time zones or even solar observations until, yeah, we can do a lot with solar observations, but I think until we do a lot of high altitude, like super high altitude solar observations, that will really help us to get an understanding of exactly how far, or maybe a better understanding of how far the sun is, although you've still got a lot of refraction and stuff, even up 150,000 feet. Karen B., you're the expert on that. How has the sun calculation stuff been going lately? Are you guys still doing that, or still pouring through the data?
Well, as far as the last sun tracking session goes, that one was more about triangulation.
Yeah.
And that actually, Brian was doing most of that with Antonio after the fact. So I haven't done much with that as far as that goes, but I do still spend a lot of time thinking about the sun and talking about it with Zach and stuff. And it's kind of perplexing because it's, as far as making the azimuthal angles work on a flat plane compared to a globe, I mean, that's kind of where the big problem is. And so we haven't really figured out what's affecting the azimuth. We don't know if it's refraction or if it's magnetism. I kind of am of the opinion that it's probably both. There's probably both things going on there, because like you were talking about the magnetic field earlier, there's predictable angles that happen in the magnetic field. You know, they're demonstrable and predictable angles. So that's one thing that I've been thinking about, but I haven't really got a chance to sit down with it and really crunch numbers on it. But
well,
Yeah,
I'll touch on
yeah, I
that
see
real
what
quick.
you're saying.
So what we're doing with all that data is I've been working on the model where it shows the globe Earth on one side and the flat plane on the other side. Actually, I'll share it with you real quick.
Did Antonio say that you created that program to do that?
Yes, I'm the creator of that, which is half the problem with all the math that I have to go through and make sure is right, because we're not going to present it until we know everything's right. But so what we do is we take all the data, and I've taken all the naval data, a couple million lines of naval data, and we're trying to project it properly, how they say, with the elevation azimuth onto. And we're
Am I the only one who Brian?
Yeah, I think we're losing you, Brian. I don't know if are you using Wi-Fi?
No, as
Thought it was my connection.
BFE. Let me stop screen sharing.
Yeah,
No, it's
actually
probably because I'm
getting
out in BFE.
live stream. I'm having problems with my live stream as well. Like, it keeps crashing. I don't know if it's happening to everybody in the chat as well. Somebody had asked, let's see, where was it? I lost it now.
Yeah, I'm trying to get back to the web page. That's why I thought it was my connection, because everything's loading right now. All my tabs are spinning.
Yeah, I know. I've been having that a lot lately. Thanks, NSA, for spying on me. You're very annoying. Anthony Riley said, can you please explain how the sun and moon both Catherine wheel across the sky on a flat Earth? And are you guys familiar with how the sun sort of cartwheels and the moon also sort of cartwheels it through its trajectory?
Yes. That's one of the things that, like, people always talk about. They don't know if the sun is an actual physical object. And when I look at it through the solar filter and I take pictures of it with the solar filter and I zoom way in on it and I see the sunspots and I see how the sunspots change position on the sun, I'd really be blown away if I found out that the sun was not an actual physical object in the sky, because that's what it looks like.
Well, okay, let me put it to you this way, though. So let's just say, hypothetically, you've got a projector, right, that projects out light onto a wall. And let's just say that there's a crack on that projector, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then that crack in the projector is going to be displayed on the wall. And so if you don't know what the source light is, you don't know anything about the projector, all you can do is observe the projection, well, you'd see that big, huge crack and you'd say, well, I'd be very surprised to find that this big, huge crack isn't a physical object. And I'm not dogging on you here. I'm sort of playing devil's advocate. But what if the sun, what if what we're seeing of the sun is not a physical object? It's not an actual representation of what we're seeing, but it's just a rendering of invisible electromagnetic waves that are rendered visible through our atmosphere itself and through the magnetic field of the Earth itself. And then, of course, the atmosphere acts like a convex lens. Our eyes are convex lenses, and every telescope's a convex lens. And so we see the sun as a circle, but maybe it's just I don't know, a rendering of a distant source of light, and we don't really know what that source is. Does that analogy make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I can see everybody's point on that, but it's just when I look at it, when I'm sitting there looking at it through the camera, it just doesn't look like that to me. It's like when people say that the moon is a projection. Like when I look at the moon, zoomed in, and I can see all the little tiny details of the craters and the shadows and everything. Like it doesn't look like a reflection to me, because it's kind of like a reflection to me is like it'd be like almost like a carbon copy of something. And every time you make a copy of an original object, there's some sort of degradation that happens every time you make a copy. So, when I look at these objects and they look so perfect and so pristine, to me, it doesn't look like a copy. It looks like the original. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I totally do. And I'm not saying that the sun isn't necessarily a physical object, but if the sun and moon are physical objects, and let's just say the sun for now, then we do sort of have an issue where to keep the day lengths the same from solstice to solstice, then assuming an AE projection, then the sun would have to decelerate during the northern solstice and accelerate all the way to the southern solstice in order to keep the in order to keep the days and nights lengths correct. And so I just find it hard to find a natural explanation for that sort of thing. But if you think of the source light of the sun as something else, like let me pull up a couple slides, because this may, and I'm not saying that this is what it is, but I've thought about something like this that may explain how the sun can do these maneuvers, decelerate during the northern summer and accelerate during the southern summer. I got to search my computer. Stupid Windows. I've told it not to auto update, and it restarted my computer in the middle of the night and closed all my windows and all my tabs I had open. So I have to find this. So you guys talk amongst yourselves while I find these several slides, please.
Talk. Now, Karen, you know what? I have a couple theories on this different sun and moon, and I agree with you that I think they are an object there. And the question is how they're projected down and whatnot. And hopefully that's what we'll be able to figure out here. A few more hours of doing math on the darn thing with the data we've collected.
Yeah.
But
it could
does
be
look
that the
physically there,
moon
right?
is an object and the sun is not. They can't. It could be that one is and one isn't. I don't know. Well,
that's the important thing is we admit we don't know, and we're trying to. It's a lot better than people saying, "Well, it is definitely that." That's what we don't know, and we're trying to figure it out. And I think that's, the important thing is that we are researching to try to figure it out, not just accept something someone told us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. If you got it, we're just talking among ourselves.
Oh no, Karen was going to say something. Go ahead, Karen.
The other thing too with the sun and the sunspots, well, and this doesn't necessarily prove that it's not a projection, but the sunspots, if you watch them, sometimes they'll be on the front of the sun, and then sometimes they'll be on the side of the sun, and they'll be at a skewed angle, like giving the impression that it's going around a ball, very much like the craters look when on the moon. When the craters get towards the outer edge of the moon, they start to skew and get squashed, giving the impression that it's going around a spherical object. So
yeah,
right. But you know what? She brings up a good point real quick. The craters on the moon, I have one problem with them. The craters are all the craters that face the Earth have direct impacts, in a sense going like straight down into, for lack of better words, 90 degrees into the moon. That means they had to pass through the Earth. Seeing how the moon's face is tidal locked to us, a meteor would have to pass through the Earth to hit the moon directly 90 degrees to make that, quote, nice circular crater. Because you don't see many craters at an angle. You know, one thing we did in the Army is when artillery came in, we'd go out where it hit the crater and measure the angle that it came in at to figure out where, you know, it came from.
Well,
but most of the craters on the moon, I noticed, are 90 degrees straight in.
So you're talking heliocentric theory, where she's talking flat Earth observations of the sun itself. So I do see what you're saying in terms of it being against heliocentric theory, but I think what Karen was saying, that's an interesting point. So you just sort of get a gut feeling based on your observations that it is a physical object up there. And I definitely understand that. I'm gonna share my screen here in just a second.
Yeah, I mean, that's just what it looks like to me. I mean, especially when you're out there and you're feeling the heat from it while you're under it, looking at it. I mean, that's just what it seems like. That's what my senses tell me.
Yeah.
Could
Yeah,
be
definitely.
wrong. I don't know, but that's just what I get from it when I'm looking at it.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, and I think sometimes we should, you know, we're always taught not to trust our gut, not to trust our emotions, not to trust our eyes, and I think that's, you know, it's definitely something that we need to retrain ourselves to do. So that's interesting. Now, on that same token, a physical sun and moon, it does bring about some pretty difficult problems for flat Earth, assuming a circular AE sort of layout. But throwing that all aside for a second, you know, our eyes, you know, are very keen instruments. Our eyes are very sensitive. They help us keep our balance. Our eyes are good for fairly close range as well as fairly long range, and the closer something is to you, the better your eyes serve you. The more distant something is from you, the more your eyes can deceive you, especially because of the nature of light. We tend to think that light is something that it isn't. We tend to think that light always travels in straight lines, and we tend to think that if we can see something that appears to be a source of light, then it must be a source of light. But okay, so let me screen share and run through a couple things with you guys real quick, because I'm throwing this sort of stuff out there because I know we've got a lot of great minds on this show, and really whenever you're hanging out with flat earthers, you're talking to a bunch of great minds, in my opinion. And so I've run this across a few different groups. I think I even brought it up briefly on Globebusters once, but I'm going to do a video on this. So, okay, you've got two laser pointers, but the observer has no idea that there's a laser pointer. And of course, you can't even see the beam unless there's dust in the room. So if an observer can observe just the dot on the wall of the laser, you know, he really can't tell much about how far that laser is, and he can't really tell much about, you know, what's going on in here. Now, if maybe there's scratches on this lens and no scratches on that lens, this observer might say, well, this dot's different than that dot, and they could, you know, sort of wonder why. But if you're not aware of the source of the light, then it's an exercise sort of in futility. Now, let me hide this. And so going on to the next thing, let's just say hypothetically, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but okay, this vertical line, this red line going vertically, represents the North Pole aligned to Polaris on a flat Earth. Okay, and so let's just pretend, hypothetically, this is a theory postulation. Hypothetically, there's a source light or a source of even electromagnetic waves that are being generated from the center. And that light is bouncing off of something, whether it's a dome or whether it's frozen hydrogen or whether it's just some natural ionized plasma up there, where however high. And that source light bounces off this at an angle and then comes down and hits the atmosphere. And you may say the apparent sun is right here. Now, 12 hours later, the source light hasn't moved, but the angle of whatever this reflector has moved, and suddenly you've got midnight over here, and then the apparent sun might be somewhere over here. and this would represent sort of like the northern summer. Now, nothing's moved, and fast forward 6 months to where you're going to the southern solstice. So just to recap, this right here represents 12 hours, 24 hours, another 12 hours, another 12 hours, and that's the northern summer. So 6 months later, during the southern summer, the angle of this thing has just changed slowly over time to where now you've got the apparent sun further south, and then this would be 12 hours from that. And remember, we're all tiny little observers, you know, that are in bubbles of atmosphere. And so even if this beam of source light is invisible and renders into the visible spectrum somewhere in the magnetosphere, then we're going to see an instance of the sun, and it may even appear to be a 3D spherical object. I mean, it very well may be. We really don't know. Now, again, I'm not saying this is what's going on, but just to give you guys an idea of how our eyes can be deceived by light, or rather how light can just do really amazing things that you would have never thunk. This is a friend of mine's sort of garage area. They've got a koi fish pond here, and what they have in the middle of the pond, oh, I got to play it. Okay, there, pause it there. Ah, crap, hold on, let me back it up. Whoa. Okay, so in the middle of the pond, they've got these two fountains, and the fountains each make a perfect dome of water. Perfect dome, so there's like no interruptions in the water. And off to the left, you've got a single source laser beam that is shot through directly straight through both of these domes. And what happens when you turn the lights off, I was really amazed, and I had to shoot this because, okay, let me pause it right here, because you can barely see it. It was dark in there. But all over the walls, all over the ceilings, you had these instances of these red dots everywhere. They were just everywhere from one single laser light. And so I'm not saying this is an explanation for stars by any means, but this just sort of demonstrates that a single source of light can do all sorts of things. And if you, the observer, was unaware of that single laser and these two domes of simply water, you'd have no idea where all these dots are coming from. And so my big overarching point is there are so many unknown variables in terms of what is in between our eye and the source of the sunlight. It's very difficult for us to say what's going on with the sun. And so I like your approach, Karen B, because it seems like you're much more down to earth. And I agree with you that for the longest time as a flat earther, I thought it made a lot of sense that the sun and moon were spherical. And I still think that makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense that the phases of the moon are due to reflected sunlight on the flat earth. I still think that makes sense. But I think that sort of a problem is that, you know, a lot of people tend to take the heliocentric values and apply it to flat earth. So I watched a video the other day where this guy was a flat earther, and he was sort of dissecting the AE map layout and showing all of these problems of how, you know, the sun wouldn't work on a flat earth, this wouldn't work on a flat earth. But we really, with the amount of magnetic field lines and atmosphere and unknown variables of different types of media up there in the, you know, atmosphere, there's really no telling what's going on with sunlight. And I just think that it's really possible that the sun could be, because there's so many strange observations about the sun, but the sun could be something completely different than what we think it is and still give the results of it looking like a sphere, you know, going up over around us or whatever. But so just wanted to throw that out there. Any comments on this? Because I think it's just interesting stuff about how light can definitely trick us if we're not aware of all of the variables involved, and if we're not aware of the actual source.
I agree. I agree with that. I definitely take all that stuff into consideration too. You know, I think about that a lot. I've actually discussed it with Antonio quite a bit too. So, and I've actually drawn similar diagrams to what you had there with like the plate reflecting, except not really exactly that. More of like a kind of drawing a dome and then having the reflection kind of moving up and down the dome from the center.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense because again, like if the sun's a physical object, then we've got, and it isn't up to us to prove any of this. I mean, we know the Earth's flat, we know it doesn't have curvature, we know it's not spinning, and so it's really not up to us to prove any of this. But when you introduce a physical sun, then there is sort of a logistical issue, like I said before, in terms of it accelerating in the south and decelerating in the north, and something like this simple explains all that whatever that reflector is would be moving at a constant speed and just merely changing its angle slowly over time, and you'd get the seasons. So it could be, I'm not saying that's what it is, but it could be something bizarre like that, because honestly, we have no freaking clue what the source light of the sun is. No clue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I gotta run, guys. It's been fun, but I gotta take care of some family stuff and all that. I'll catch you all later.
Okay,
Alright.
later, man. Yeah, we'll probably be wrapping it up pretty soon anyway, unless anybody had anything they wanted to bring up, talk about.
I had something yesterday, and I said, "Man, I got to talk about this." And I can't even think of it now for some reason. It makes me mad.
Don't you hate when that happens?
Yeah, I was laughing when you said earlier how you have to either write it down or whatever. Yeah, that's what I need to start doing. Maybe I need to get a notebook.
Oh, what I do is I open up a notepad file on my computer, and I'll put notes down on that. Because like literally, yeah, when we get into these conversations, it's like we talk about so much, and like I'll just forget what I was going to say. I do that all the time. But if I put a little note, then I'm like, oh yeah. But then by the time I talk about it, it's often like not even the topic of the conversation anymore. But at least, you know, it helps us to get our points out without interrupting one another, which I'm terrible for. Yes, I know I am terrible for interrupting people, and I am very sorry if I've interrupted anyone.
No, somebody asked, what about the moon is tidally locked to the Earth, but we all see the same face of the moon, never the sides?
Yeah, tidal locking is a theory that was developed by globeheads in order to explain away the really quite impossible coincidence that we would always see one face of the moon. And so tidal locking isn't a thing. It's a theory to explain away that observation. Because I did a video a while back. I can't think of the name of it. I think it was part of the Globe is Dead series. I think it was the Globe is Dead 4. Not to be confused with 3.5, but I go into just how unlikely the heliocentric model is. I mean, really starting with the Big Bang Theory. So nothing exploded, and all of that explosion eventually coalesced into a solar system. And by the way, there's big problems with star and planet formation as well. Contradictions, which I've made a video on that. But anyway, we'll hand them all that. And so a planet coalesces out of stardust in a vacuum, which makes no sense. And then you get inanimate soup, and that inanimate soup somehow turns into self-replicating life forms with DNA, single-celled organisms. And then you get evolution. And then you get people on this planet, in quotes, who can observe everything and study and measure everything. And so not only are we lucky just to be here on this hypothetical planet Earth in the infinite space theory, but then we've got, for example, the moon, where it appears to be the exact same size as the sun, more or less. Now, that doesn't seem like that big of a coincidence, but in all actuality, the sun is allegedly 400 times further and 400 times larger than the moon. And so if you were to pick, you know, what are the odds that you would get that out of a random, you know, it must be 1 in the millions of millions chance that your moon would be just about exactly the same size as the sun, according to an observer on Earth. So that's a huge coincidence. Now you've got another coincidence where we only ever see one face of the moon. And so when you start stacking these coincidences on top of each other, first of all, life on Earth by itself is one in some trillions of trillions. The fact that we are sentient life is some one in some trillions of odds. And then we have a moon that's the same size as the sun. We happen to be in the Goldilocks zone of the host star. We always only ever see one face of the moon forever. And so they have to start inventing theories to explain away some of these coincidences, just because the law of averages dictates you can't have that many unlikely coincidences and have something be possible. It gets to the realm of improbability to where it's impossible. And so the infinite spaced theorists will say, yes, but space is infinite, and so it's bound to happen eventually. And I'll hand them that for life. But so what about all these other coincidences? Are you really going to say that these are all coincidences? And, the whole thing with tidal locking is just absurd, to state that the face of the moon would somehow be constantly locked face down towards the planet because of the tides. It's just a bizarre theory. Like, why doesn't the Earth pull the moon towards itself? If the moon's weak gravity is strong enough to pull up on the ocean waters, then why isn't the Earth's strong gravity strong enough to pull the moon towards the Earth? But instead, science says that the moon is getting further and further away from the Earth. It's something like an inch per year. But somebody else in this conversation brought up earlier, what about during every no moon phase, or especially solar eclipses? Why isn't the moon then sort of playing there's sort of a tug of war between the gravity of the Earth and the gravity of the sun upon the moon? And we don't see any of this. We don't see the effects of gravity like we should if the heliocentric model were correct. And of course, I'm not arguing what goes up won't come down. We're arguing the theory of gravity as a warping of space-time, which is another theory. So, yeah, it's just, the whole thing is just crazy, man. And I'm just so surprised that all of the smartest people in the world bought into the Globe Earth Lie for so long, and including us. I mean, thank God that we've been awoken to this, man. I mean, really, thank God. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also speaking of everything you were just talking about, that's another thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is eclipses, because of the eclipse coming up, and I've been looking a lot about how to record it, because I'm planning on getting somewhere under the path of totality and trying to record the eclipse with at least one camera, possibly two, because that's something that really interests me, because if the moon is traveling between the sun and the Earth during a solar eclipse, it's like, it really boggles my mind why you don't see the moon approaching the sun. That's one thing that really bothers me. Like, why don't we see that?
Yeah, and here's the thing. It's like the moon moves relatively slowly through space. It's only going 2288 according to the heliocentric model. And so that alignment is pretty much already there until you spin around to see it on the Earth. But the eclipses make way more sense in a flat Earth scenario, because did you know that some solar eclipses cast, they cast a shadow, and that shadow over time is represented as sort of a squiggly line, and that's called an eclipse signature.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll literally look like a squiggly line that goes across the United States or whatever.
Yeah.
And sometimes that shadow is like 50 miles in diameter, but other times it's as little as 2 miles in diameter.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense in the heliocentric model, because why would the moon be casting a shadow that is so small? I mean, and I know they say with the umbra and the penumbra, but still, that just doesn't.
Yeah, it's absurd. It's patently absurd. And the only time that you get converging shadows is in the heliocentric theory. Nowhere in real life can you demonstrate that. It is really quite logical. It's counterintuitive, very anti-logical. But do you know, per se, because I haven't looked into it, I am familiar with the August eclipse coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know how wide the path of totality is supposed to be for that one?
It's wider than a couple miles. I know that there's gonna be some places in South Carolina that get totality, and where I was planning on going is Andrews, which is in the mountains in western North Carolina. But I don't know exactly how wide the path is. I've gone on the website and checked, but it's fairly wide. I mean, it's probably closer to the 50-mile mark than the 2-mile mark.
Right, and even 50 is just crazy in my eyes because the diameter of the moon is supposedly, what is it, 2,000 miles diameter, I think, something like that. And so yeah, for a 2,000-mile diameter object to cast even a 50-mile shadow, it's absurd. I think that the eclipse signatures and the width of them, the very minute width of them, is very good evidence for a nearby sun and moon. If the moon is indeed what's transiting the sun during a total eclipse, which I think it is, but it really goes.
What if it's not the moon?
What's that?
What if it's not even the moon?
Yeah, it may not be, but I've studied total solar eclipses, annular solar eclipses, and looked at them for the last 100 years, and it always occurs during a no moon phase. And so, to me, that just makes absolute perfect sense. And also, you can look at the azimuth angle of the moon leading up to and going away from eclipses, and it will make sense that it would have transited the sun. So there may be like Rahu and Ketu type things in play here. But I think that would necessarily apply, not exclusively, but necessarily apply to lunar eclipses.
Yeah,
I
would agree with that.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat saying that you didn't answer the original question I asked.
What was the question? I'm so sorry. I'm terrible at that.
About why we only see one side of the moon.
Yeah, they say that it's because of tidal locking, but are we talking heliocentric theory or we're talking flat Earth? I would say that the reason we only see one side of the moon in the flat Earth is because it's not a physical object. We're looking at a projection is a bad word, I think, but we're looking at an instance of light that appears to be a physical object, but it's merely the rendering of visible light rendering of electromagnetic waves into the visible spectrum by our magnetic field and by our atmosphere itself. And so I don't know, to give an example, let's just say you shine a light through 3 panes of glass that are all aligned to one another. And if you're looking at that from a side view, you might see instances of that flashlight on each pane of glass. But if you didn't know where the source light was, then you might think that instance of light was the source. And so, it makes a lot of sense to me that if the moon is, say, going in circles around the circular flat Earth area, and what we're seeing is a completely refracted, like 100% refracted downward towards our eye instance of whatever the light source is, then it makes a lot of sense that it would never change. It's almost like, I don't know, like if you're looking through a microscope and the microscope has a certain pattern of scratches on it. Well, no matter what you look at through that microscope, you're going to see those exact certain patterns of scratches. And so in the heliocentric model, they have to come up with all sorts of weird, bizarre lies to make the moon work as a spinning sphere, and we always see one side of it. Whereas in flat Earth, really the best answer is we honestly don't know what the moon is. We honestly don't know how high it is, where the source light's coming from, what it's made of. NASA's lied about everything. And so, we can only theorize. Really, that's the best answer. But yeah.
Charles, I'm sorry. Charles is the one that asked those 2 questions from Anthony. He said he didn't have an answer.
Oh, okay. And it's hard to say because some people want to know what the heliocentric answer is, and some people want to know what the flat Earth answer is. And, in terms of flat Earth, like the best thing that flat Earth has going for it is the mother effing Earth is flat, and and it is not spinning at all. And those are the two best things that Flat Earth has going for it. Now, in order to combat this beast of this generational brainwashing, we have to pick apart the heliocentric model in all of its, I mean, it really is logically repulsive once you've really started looking at the heliocentric model, thinking about things like orbital mechanics, trying to animate them out, and realizing that even the even orbital mechanics in a gravitational universe is an impossibility. It doesn't work. The fact that, you know, when the sun is rising, the Earth should be raising up towards your feet at 66,600 miles an hour, and 12 hours later, when the sun is setting, the Earth should be racing down away from your feet, so down up away from under you at 66,600 miles an hour. And so just over a 12-hour period, our inertial reference frame relative to that of the Earth should have changed at a total acceleration of over 133,000 miles an hour. And yet we have ponds on Earth, if you don't throw a stone in it, are completely still. You know, there's so much simple physical evidence. I love to play a clip of the plane doing a nosedive, because if any pilot does a proper nosedive, the Earth will always be stationary beneath him. And that's regardless of what direction he was going prior. He can fly around in circles, he can go east, he can go west, and if he does a proper nosedive, the Earth is always stationary beneath that plane. And so bada bing, bada boom, the Earth ain't moving. And you can't say, oh, that plane retains its reference frame from the time of takeoff to the time of landing, because that is just patently absurd. One of Newton's laws is an object in motion will tend to maintain its velocity unless enacted upon by some other force. And obviously, even a propeller or several jet engines attached to a plane will definitely count as some other force. And so while an airplane may be spinning towards the east at 1,000 miles an hour before it takes off, once that thing takes off and heads west and goes north and south and flies around, it would not be tattooed to the frame of reference with the Earth beneath it. It absolutely would not. And the fact that any pilot can do a proper nosedive after any trajectory, any velocity, and the Earth is always stationary, 100% debunks the heliocentric theory. And it's these basic experiments that you know, made me a flat earther. But when we start getting into things like the moon and the sun and the stars, I mean, that stuff is way out there, and we can only speculate, and we can't even go to the dang Antarctic and study. So like I said, sort of bringing this full circle, whenever you do a puzzle, you start with the edges. And if somebody takes away the edges, all the corner pieces and all the edges of your puzzle, and puts in fictitious puzzle pieces, you're never going to finish that puzzle ever. And so we need full disclosure. I'm not talking about aliens either. I'm talking about full disclosure. We need to take control of our government again. Our governments are out of control, and we, the people, are the ones in charge. It's always been that way. However, we've allowed these governments to somehow trick us into thinking that we need them. And all they've done for the last 100 years in America is essentially wipe our wealth out of existence, turn us into debt slaves, and mind control us with the television, NASA, and all the others. And so we need total control over our lives and over our future and over our destiny. And when you've got entities like the Federal Reserve printing our wealth out of existence, when you've got entities like NASA giving us fake puzzle pieces and tricking us and deceiving us, when you've got entities like LIGO claiming that they've proven gravity waves, when you've got entities like the IRS, which are merely just another arm of the non-federal, non-reserve bank scam, when you have entities like the CIA and the NSA spying on the American people, you know, basically considering us terrorists in terms of the Patriot Act because we're constitutionalists or because we read the Bible, that's now considered a terrorist. So, you know, if you don't think this government is totally out of control, then you need to wake up to this. And I think once enough people wake up to it, then, you know, we can peacefully take back the power and put back the power where it belongs, and that is with all of the people equally. And just a final thought, and I'll be done with this rant. But I think that flat Earth really is the key to waking up enough people to really, really enact that sort of change. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. Not only just because it's a great deception, but because I think that we can really, really enact positive change in the future if we can get people awake to this, get people awake to all of the other scams that have enslaved us when we should be living in the most prosperous and healthy times of all of history. Things are not going the way they're supposed to be going because we've allowed psychopaths to take control of our governments and corporations, and frankly, profit is chosen over human well-being in every single circumstance, whether it's governments or corporations or whatever. Profit is always chosen over the benefit of humanity. And I'm sorry, the entire purpose of governments and corporations is to serve the people at our behest. And if they're not doing what we're telling them to do, then I hate to use the quote from the old Trumpinator, but you're fired. And it should be as simple as that. Thank you, guys. And anybody else want to wrap up, and then we'll wrap this up.
No, I agree with everything you just said, and I think it's a lot of people kind of say that flat Earth is a distraction from all that stuff that you just talked about, but then those same people will say, well, oh, that's just the way it is, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I kind of feel like if you know about all those other deceptions and then you find out about flat Earth, it kind of lights a fire under your ass to say, you know what, there is something to to fight for here. There's something to be said, and there's a reason to stand up to the powers that should not be. They're like the worst HOA ever. They just take our money to tell us what to do.
Huh. Yeah. Somebody in the chat says I spelled my last name wrong. Maybe they were talking to someone else. But yeah, I totally agree with what you just said as well. I think that there are a lot of diversions. There definitely are. There are so many diversions in this world. It's really amazing that that we've come together like this over the last 2 years, and I only see this whole thing getting stronger. But there are so many diversions, and people that call flat Earth a diversion either haven't looked into it at all, which we can't necessarily, we can't necessarily have angst for them for that because we were all there once. But frankly, I think a lot of the stuff that we see in the media, like the Sandy Hook stuff and all the false flags, yes, that's for war and profiteering, but I think all of it, and the movies, the fantasy movies and stuff, I think that that's all a big distraction so that it keeps us from thinking. I mean, if you work a 9-to-5 job and take care of a family and pay your bills, it is very enjoyable to sit back and watch an episode of Star Wars. And yes, I still like Star Wars. It lost a little bit of its luster, but you can't blame people for that. But unfortunately, we're being programmed in that way it's basically the whole beer and circus thing. And if once we can wake people up to flat Earth and they see that it's not a diversion, everything else was a diversion of this. This ultimate truth wakes people up to see. It's like they see everything else. It makes everything else make sense. It is like flat Earth is the corners and the edges, and it is the puzzle. The puzzle is complete. The Earth is flat. It's not spinning. All of scientism or theorism was a lie, and that there's not even a debate anymore. I mean, it has been proven that thoroughly. But we're dealing with a very well-funded and publicized mechanism that is the mainstream media, who are going to do whatever they can to stop this truth movement. At least in the public eye, because the last thing they want is 90% of people looking at this with a skeptical, critical eye. If they do want people looking at this so that they can kill an effigy of it, so that it may put people back 10 or 20 years looking at flat Earth, whereas I was put back 6 months looking at it from the first time that it was mentioned to me to the first time that I looked at it, and then it took me a week to become a flat earther. If this is put in the public eye in the wrong sort of light, it'll put flat Earth back decades, I think, in the public.
Yeah, so, I could see your point with that.
Yep. So any Anything else,
About
guys?
about that eclipse, I heard a while back, but I don't know if this is true or not. I thought that I heard that the totality of the solar eclipse will start right at the start of the Madrid fault line.
Wait, say that one more time. I missed you there.
When the eclipse reaches totality, it'll be right at the start of the Madrid fault line.
Huh. You know, that's interesting because I remember reading a couple years ago that, and I thought it was just bullcrap coincidence, but I remember reading a few years ago when we had a rash of earthquakes, there was this guy who noticed that all of these major earthquakes were coinciding with celestial alignments or like planetary alignments, wandering star alignments. And, you know, in a heliocentric theory, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But he was actually predicting freaking earthquakes based on these celestial alignments, and he was accurate with it. And so, you know, that really brings up a good point. America hasn't seen an up close and personal total eclipse for a long time, and I'm just wondering if that sort of thing may trigger geological upheaval. Honestly, anybody that's living, you know, on the far west coast must know that that place is a very dangerous place to be living, and you know, in terms of earthquakes. And so, yeah, I might want to get the hell out of Cali before that earthquake. And I know I may sound paranoid, but I mean, geologists, and I think we can sort of trust geologists on certain things. They say it's not a matter of if, you know, it's a matter of when. And whether it's the Yosemite Park, where you've got that whole caldera of you know, molten lava that sits underneath the you know, the central plains, or you've got, you know, there's just lots of different really volatile, ready to spring fault lines, especially on the western side of the U.S. That, yeah, interesting. I hadn't thought about that because there is a connection to these celestial alignments and earthquakes, it seems.
So what it is the Madrid fault line is falls like on the state line between like Tennessee and Kentucky and Arkansas and Missouri.
Oh, wow, I must have been thinking of San Andreas. Okay, but go ahead.
Yeah. So what that spot is, it's not where it reaches totality, but that's the peak of totality. So that would be where the longest point of totality will be.
Ah,
Yeah.
So there's totality.
Okay.
It starts all the way on, you know, in Oregon, and it comes all the way across down to South Carolina. It goes across the entire United States. But the spot where you're going to have the longest amount of time for viewing totality would be right there.
great. I guess that we're like sort of right on the bullseye then, aren't we?
Yes, you are. That's what I was about to say. Me and Karen need to go hit up your house during the solar eclipse because you're a lot closer to it than us.
Wow.
I thought it was up in the mountains somewhere, like the Smoky Mountains area, but no, I just looked at the path and it goes directly through the entire middle state, like from southeast to northwest of South.
Well,
Yeah.
we should totally do an eclipse party, and we'll do it like definitely not at my house because my house is very small. But we could do it someplace, you know, weather permitting. I know a place where we could do it outside, where we could have room for a few hundred people.
Yeah, I mean the place I was thinking about going to is Andrews, and the reason I picked that place is because that particular town gets 2 minutes and 38 seconds of totality. And then depending on where you are, it's like it goes down to like 1 minute and 45 or something like that.
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
when I go over to a friend's house who lives in Greer, when I'm coming up, I guess it's 14, you get a beautiful view of a really, really tall peak. I'd love to see an eclipse from a tall peak, but I don't know how doable that is. But like, yeah,
Well, that's what I was thinking too, like going to the Smoky Mountains, because I mean it's not a very tall range, but you know, I'm just thinking, my thinking was the higher the better.
Yeah. Well, that's a good rule of thumb, regardless. No, I'm kidding. But But yeah, I think that's, I'm glad we had this talk, because I don't know if you guys were planning to do something like that, but maybe I'll set up something to where we can do like because they've done a lot of stuff in Colorado, like flat Earth meetups and stuff. Maybe we can do some kind of a meetup here on the east side for the eclipse. I think that would be stellar, literally stellar.
We should be doing more meetups though, because there's a lot of flat earthers out here in North Carolina, actually.
Can you present me?
Yeah, there's flat Earth people everywhere. Indeed.
Can you present me, John?
Oh, do I have to do that? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Hang on one second.
Yeah.
Okay, I can. What do I do? Click on you.
There's gonna be on the top right of
I
me.
got
It says it'll say. Okay.
I doing it. Yep.
Dang, where did it go? It was on the screen a second ago. Maybe it was here. It was here. I don't know. I didn't press anything. It just disappeared.
It's definitely coming through on the live stream, so it's all good there.
I'm trying to find North Carolina. Okay, South Carolina.
Yeah, it goes all the way through Charleston.
It's like, it says, let me make it bigger.
But see how wide it is? It's a wider path. It's a wider shadow this time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's a good many miles of radius. Yeah. The record is it gets down to 2 miles. Can you believe that? I was really shocked when I learned that.
That I've never heard that. I didn't know that. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah. It only happened a few times, but it was documented. Yeah.
You live really close. So you need to go south then, because who said they were going to Greer?
John did.
Yeah, me. I live like really close to Greer. Yeah, this is like it's gonna go right over my house, literally like right in the center of. That's an eclipse that's coming up in August. Total eclipse. Yeah.
Yeah. See, and if the thick red line in the middle, if you follow that back, see Andrews is right directly in the middle of that. So it gets the closer you are to that thick red line, the longer you get as far as viewing of the totality.
Right. I think like where I'm at, I'm just a little bit northeast of there, not far. I'm just a hair northeast of that red line. If I'm not mistaken, I can't tell if that's Greenville but even Greenville is pretty close to where I'm at. Because there's Greenwood. There's Greenwood, Charlotte. Yeah, we're right there. Columbia. So we're right here.
We're right over by the A.
No, this is the main thing right here. Like, yeah, I'm right. I'm very close to that red line. Very close.
Oh, so then you get a good 2 minutes then of totality, which is awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Wait, you're over here?
I can't see the red line going right through the center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm just northeast of that.
So you're down kind of near Clemson?
No, come down like where it says South Carolina. Like I'm under the O in South Carolina.
Oh, what year? When did you, what? When?
Wait, you moved? Did you move? You're not in Greenville anymore?
Oh, wait a minute. There's Greenville. Okay, never mind. I'm totally...
Put that high down. You just...
No. Okay, so no, I'm wrong. Okay, so now I see... I was looking at the center of the map. I saw Columbia, and that looks like my little junction there, but no, there's my junction. So no, I'm sorry. Spartanburg. I'm actually northeast of the whole thing. But yeah, Greenville would be good, and Greenville's not far at all. It's like a 20-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, okay.
Let me see what North Carolina looks like.
Well, see, then you got to follow it back. See, North Carolina, you're getting way into the western part, into the mountains. It's just the very corner of North Carolina that gets it.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, Greer. I bet you if you got on top of a mountain in Greer, you'd get a good view of it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to get to the center of that circle because I want to record it, and I'm, not very confident in my ability to be on the ball. So I'm like, I want to get as much time as possible being in the path of totality to record it.
Yeah, we need to plan something because, and you know, she has a P900 too, so that's.
I have a
can't wait to see it.
P900 and I have a solar tracker. I've got an Ioptron solar tracker. So I'm like, I'm trying, and it really worried me too because when I went and I checked out Andrews a couple of weeks ago, and the whole sky was all cloudy, and I was like, ugh, I hope it's not like this when an eclipse comes if I drive all the way up there. So I don't know. I don't even know if that's the best place to go anymore for sure.
Yeah, what they'll do is like the day before, they'll just chemtrail the crap out of the sky and make sure that it's overcast and cloudy and rainy.
Yeah,
That
probably.
would suck. Oh man.
So
Oh, that would suck. I mean, I thought about it a few times, but man, now that it's getting so close, that would suck.
So yeah, awesome though. That's definitely something that we should we still have what is it's towards the end of August, right? Was it August 20 something?
August 21st.
Yeah. So we've got some time to plan, but yeah, I definitely like we still need to get up and do some street interviews and stuff. So like yeah, don't be a stranger, Karen B and Candy, because yeah, we still need to meet up and do some flat earth stuff, and I'd really like to do some just random street interviews and see how it goes, because I really like those videos that Dell does.
On the 8th, I changed it to the 8th because somebody was going to be away that wanted to come. So it's going to be July 8th. And Zulu's coming from New York too.
Is he really?
Yeah, him. Yep.
If I have the extra monetary funds, I will come. But Karen B's coming to get me, right? You're gonna come. You're gonna come get me, right?
We talked about it. Don't worry about it, right? Don't worry about all that. We got it.
Awesome. Yeah. So the 8th it is then. Definitely. It's a. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything's going to change between now and then. I would just hate to come up there and just be totally like broke, because half the time I'm broke and half the time I have just enough money to pay my bills with a little money left over. So, you know,
that's the story of my life. And
not that you have to spend money to have fun, but you know, like I would like to help pay for some gas money or whatever, you know. So, but yeah, I'll plan on it if you guys want to. I don't have a car right now, so if you want to come get me, yeah.
Yeah, I have a car.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, there's plenty of people that are willing to give you a ride. I talked to a couple of people, so I mean, it's not like a bunch of people are going to be here. I only know not that many. I mean, Zulu's coming all the way from New York, but that's because me and him are good friends. So.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, well then the 8th it is, and I'll plan on it. And just Karen, you've got my numbers and everything, right?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Yeah, just get up with me, and we'll do that. It sounds like a lot of fun. I haven't done any met any actual real life flat earthers in person. So you know, I've talked to people about it, and I'm sure I've got them thinking. But you know, the first time you bring this up to anybody, they always think you're a crazy moron. But it will be nice to be amongst like-minded people. So yeah, looking forward to it. And do you guys want to? We're going to wrap this up. Do you guys want to plug anything any work you're doing? Anything that we should go check out? Or
No, I'm not. Well,
I put out a new video today. It's about asteroids because today's Asteroid Day.
Awesome. Well, then everybody go check out Karen B's channel and watch what's the video called?
It's called Asteroid Day.
Asteroid Day. Okay, Hangout. No, I've got a note here, notepad file for the Hangout. Asteroid Day, and I'll put a link for that in the video notes and stuff. So, anything else? Anybody else want to plug anything before we go? I hear crickets. So first of all, I want to thank everybody on the panel that showed up. Yep, Karen B just put a link in the group chat, so I'm going to copy that and put it in the show notes as well. And thank you guys so much. God bless you all for hanging out. It's Mina says bye, and it's just been a real pleasure talking with you guys. So as always, you know, spread the word, spread the world, and peace out, everybody. Love y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.